Okay, we are live. Welcome to the stream. We've got a very exciting locals tonight. If you're new to the channel, then we hold these locals tournaments every week. But if you've been here for a while, then you know that we hold these every week, and we've been sort of going through the formats. Every month, we sort of dive into a newer format near the end of the DM era, and now we're sort of going back and like doing some from the beginning. We sort of jump back and forth like that. But this is one of the ones from closer to the beginning of the DM era. And this is PSV format, which no one really plays. It's kind of an unlimited format. It came out basically just, using the cards, the new cards from Pharaoh's Servant, plus the limited list from Treasure format. And so it's a bit interesting. Hey, a hobby, welcome to the stream. Always a pleasure to have you here. And yeah, we've got 8 players in the locals right now. There is still time for anyone to like sign up, but I think I'm gonna call it like, yeah, let's just start it. We got 8. 8's a good number, so let's dive into it. This is a format that I'm not really expecting to get like the most people to join, so I'm just gonna start it, not drag things out. It's also 9 p.m. EST for me, which is a bit of a late start for me. So let's just get this thing on the road. Welcome, Adrian Brunner. Again, always a pleasure to have you on the stream. And yeah, this should be a pretty fun one. But let's send this challenge link to the Discord and let us start the event. We're starting here. GLM said, I was sick and my mom surprised me with the Jinzo tin way back in the day, affectionately referred to as the Tinzo iconic card. That's a great pun for that. And yeah, it's such an iconic card. I've got like old copies of Jinzo that like I have a lot of fond memories of because it was so powerful. Hobby says, won't be playing sadly because of the time, and that is completely understandable. It is pretty late. At least, on the East Coast, it's late. And I mainly, I hold polls every week for, people to vote on what time they want it to happen, and 9 p.m. won out this week. So yeah, and it looks like we already got our first game here, Dump Truck versus Aratus. Let's dive into it, see what's going on here. But PSV format's kind of interesting. Like the next format, Imperial, feels like a watered down version of Android, which is the format afterwards. And Android's like a somewhat popular format, so if you've played Android, then you should know relatively how that feels. But in PSV is like very, very different because you've got 3 Jinzo, 3 Io, 3 Call the Haunted, 3 Limiter Removal. You've got so many powerful like OTK tools in the format that like I personally think the Machine OTK is the best deck in the format by far. That was just based on my testing. But people signed up for this tournament and, they have to send me their deck lists in advance. And I actually saw a wide variety of things that people were playing, but this is a pretty standard monster here, Mechanical Chaser. You see that a lot in this format. It's the level 4 monster with the highest amount of attack and no drawbacks. And it also is a machine, so pretty good in that way as well. Let's see. Oh, it looks like someone's pinged me on Discord. Let me just pull up that message on Discord just to see. Because I want to make sure. I mean, it is kind of unfortunate if we've already started. And let's see. I'm getting pinged here, and okay, no, it wasn't related to the locals. We're all good. Yeah, I haven't quite figured out how to do like a two screen setup yet. Where I have like this stuff not on stream off to one side and the stuff on stream here. So I should look into that. But yeah, so occasionally I'll be going down to the phone and looking at that. Adrian Brunner says, I only got my first Jinzo when the first ban list came around and somebody sold their binder with Jinzo in it. But by that time, it wasn't really played anymore. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing about like, card hitting the ban list. That's a time where a lot of people do get them. But unfortunately, they're past their prime. And so you don't get to feel them at full power. But, that's the fun thing about going back to these formats, because you do get to play with them at full power. So you get to try them out, and Jinzo definitely is one of the strongest monsters in this format by far. It also gives you something easy to send off Painful Choice. Like in the previous format, Treasure format, Painful Choice is a card that I feel like people still haven't quite figured out how to play yet, because there isn't much graveyard setup you can do. But in PSV format, you send a Jinzo with your Painful Choice. You either get Jinzo to hand, or you get in graveyard where you can revive with something like Call of the Haunted very easily. So, there is a bit more graveyard setup you can do with Painful Choice in this format, also called the Haunted, Premature Burial. Those both help out a lot. And yeah, Morphing Jar is in this format as well at 3 copies because, this is using the Treasure format ban list, or limited list, that is. No cards are banned yet. So, Morphing Jar is unlimited. Now, whether people play it at 3 copies, unclear. If you want to go super all in on the OTK, you could potentially do that. But right now it is unlimited, and I'm not really sure how much play it actually sees. But it looks like Demtruck is in a pretty rough spot. Hopefully that Morphing Jar will be able to help them get back into it. But Aratus got such an aggressive advantage here. Now, Mirror Force is a thing in this format that you have to keep in mind. But Demtruck has not flipped it yet, which means that they might not have it. Sinastio is also in this format as well. And it looks like Aratus valued the other 2 back row there a bit better than the Snatch Deal. So Demtruck drew all 3 tomatoes. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. You want to use tomato for board presence, but the good thing is that Sangan and Witch of the Black Forest are both semi-limited in this format, so you do have the chance to just bring them out off tomatoes. Demtruck's going to go for a Call of the Haunted here, targeting a Witch of the Black Forest. Now, in this format, you can actually use quick play spells the turn they are set. So if Aratus had set an MST there to dodge around the Morphing Jar, they would have actually been able to use it on the Call of the Haunted. But it looks like they're not going to go for the MST there. Let Dumtruck get that search. That, to me, reads that they don't have an MST, but, it could also just be that they're saving it for a better, situation. Main 2, Aratus can fire something here potentially, maybe like a Hand Rip if they set that. Also, they've only got 1 card in Grave. That's kind of wild compared to Dumtruck's Grave, which has gone through a lot of monsters. Looks like they do indeed have a Hand Rip Delinquent duo here, but hitting the Jinzo isn't even that good because Dumtruck can revive it back with something like Call the Haunted potentially. So it's a bit weird in that way, but they're going to pitch a Jinzo and a Jar there. So let's see what Aratus does now, because Aratus could press their advantage. They could tribute off all their monsters with the Cannon Soldier, deal 1,500 damage to Dumtruck, put them in a very dangerous spot to be in, but it's tough to see. Adrian Brenner says, Yada and Emperor were also in the binder. I only played with a friend, and we agreed on playing with the Forbidden cards at 1 copy, so I still played Yada Lock against my friend's Burn aggro deck. Yeah, that's the nice thing about also just having friends and just playing, not necessarily at the most competitive level, but like just for fun. Because you can do that. And in this format, we get to see one of the only times this can ever happen. We saw Dark Hole, Aratus chained IO, Dumtruck chained an MST, Aratus chained another IO, and Dumtruck had the other MST there. That's the only sort of format that you'll actually see that happen here. Very, very funny. Hobby says, what is making decks want to play Morphing Jar in this format and Imperial? I think it depends on what you want to do. Like, you could potentially use Morphing Jar to get even more aggressive. Yeah, Jinzo, Call the Haunted, exactly. Like, you could set up your Jinzos in Grave, draw into things like Limiter Removal, for instance, which is hard to search out otherwise. So there are ways that you can use Morphing Jar to construct your OTKs if you are going for the machine OTK strategy. And if you're not, and you're just like running low on cards, Morphing Jar can also be good in that way. Your opponent might not expect it, for instance. So I think it's a pretty decent option in this format, although this format's really underexplored, so you're not really gonna see many people like testing out the optimal way to use Morphing Jar, unfortunately. Adrian Brenner says, man, never thought I'd see double order. Yeah, this is the only format where that actually pops up. I think actually in my video on this format, I think I might have made 2. But in my videos for them, it actually did come up a couple times, and it's just very, very funny. Yeah, the Joker says, and people thought chaining 5 hand traps was ridiculous. Yeah, this is the true first time in Yu-Gi-Oh's history where you get this sort of absurdity. Wow, and a lot of interaction going on here. Premature Burial, but that gets hit with an MST there. And looks like Dumtruck doesn't have anything else to do there, so that's going to be the end of game 1. Very, very interesting game there. And I think it does show how, like, interactive this format is. It's really funny because in early Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't really necessarily expect that level of interaction. You expect people to like do back and forth, like, oh, you've got a TT for my monster, or like, oh, Sakura 2 armor or something like that. But you don't really expect like these long chains of things. But in PSV format, you actually do indeed get some long chains a fair amount of the time. So it is kind of funny to see. So if you like that sort of thing and you want to experience it in a very early Yu-Gi-Oh format, that is potentially one to do there. Let's dive into another game here. We got History of YGO 1 versus Hoy. It looks like a very interesting sort of setup here. It looks like Hoy is on a Mahavilo equip strategy, and it seems like History of YGO 1 is playing Shallow Grave. That's kind of interesting there. And oh, well, they're on Exodia. That makes sense. So, but both players have a swords up, and that swords is going to do a lot of work for History of YG1. We don't know how many pieces there are in hand. We do see a Witch and a Sangan here, some potential revival as well. So maybe, that could just be 3 pieces in hand right now. We don't actually know. Because we came into this game a little bit late. I'm going to hop into the general voice chat on the locals channel here because I like to just be here in case people want to stop by and chat about these games as well. Aiden Brunner says, personally, I would have attributed the 3 monsters to Soldier in game 1, so they couldn't use pre-mat at all. And I think that is a potential thing you could do there. And, like, maybe because Aratus had, like, the Dust Tornado and the MST and stuff, they felt they didn't need to do that, and we're fine just having Dump Truck pay the 800 either way. But yeah, I think that is a very good move to do. Oh wow, speaking of revival here, we got double Call of the Haunted here. This will pop both those witches, and it might just be the end of the game because of that. Or the Sangan and the Witch, because, when Call goes to hand, it's not like Premature Burial. It does actually destroy the cards that are brought back with it. So this might just be all the remaining pieces the History of YG1 needs. And it looks like, okay, it looks like that's just, okay, it looks like, minimum 3 from what we know. Hoy probably knows a little bit more. I assume there are 4 in hand there. But yeah, they might be trying to go for a major push here. It looks like Malevolent Nuzzler and Axe of Despair. That's probably going on to... it doesn't really matter if you go for one or the other. History of Roger 1's banishing 4. So I get they just didn't quite have it. Yeah, that's 30... that's actually a bit more than 30-50. That's 30-50 from one Axe, and then 4250 total. Attacks in a Cannon Soldier. It's 2850, then plus the monsters. So yeah, it looks like Exodia wasn't quite able to get there in that game. But it does show how scary the deck can be. A lot of people don't play Exodia in this format because of the hand rips, and the hand rips are so devastating. But this format also does have triple backup soldiers, so you can bring back the normal pieces if you want to. But, it's interesting to see all these different strategies. Like, I didn't really feature all of them in my video on the format because I felt like certain ones weren't quite as viable. And, when I'm diving into a format that doesn't really have a base of its own, like, or at least one that I don't think will be able to get a base, then I don't really spend too much time on it. But it's still cool to see those coming out. It looks like we have someone joining the voice chat. Welcome, Neb, to the stream. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. I'm gonna change my Discord name to Hobby real quick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, we couldn't get the time so that you could actually play in it. But yeah, happy to have you on stream.
Thank you.
Yeah. We've seen some exciting games so far, and it looks like this game is no exception. Very interesting point to come in on here. It seems like Seoul is in a really bad spot because, they're down to 450 life. They've got an IO up that will then be dead next turn because you got to let it go. But we do see that they're on Mamanga. So, that set could potentially be a Mamanga there. Could get them back in the game a little bit. Cyberjar, also a very interesting set to have there. Yeah, thanks for stopping by the stream, Adrian Brunner. Always a pleasure to have you here. And hopefully you have a great day as well.
Yeah, Cannon Soldier is looking really scary right now.
Oh, yeah. Like, the Cannon Soldier ends the game. If Danny hits it, they don't even have to do anything else. They can just, go to main 2 and then tribute off for Cannon Soldier and close out the game that way. Call the Haunted, not getting back Cannon Soldier, looks like, but whoa, okay, limiter removal. So that's also a very scary outcome there. But, oh, interesting. So it looks like Soul may be on a bit of a burn mill sort of combo here. Yeah, because you don't normally see Morphing Dart number 2 outside of mill decks. But the chain energies you don't see outside of burn decks. Of course, that chain energy will be just dead for Soul. Like, Soul cannot activate chain energy, or else they just basically lose the game. Yeah, this is very scary for Soul to be in. And Morphing Dart number 2 might buy them a little bit of time, but, not much time you can buy off that. I wonder why Danny chose to set both their monsters. Okay, I guess they summoned the tomato. But I wonder why they didn't choose to attack. I feel like here, even if you hit the Morphing Jar number 2, like you'll have enough monsters in deck to probably be fine. If you do hit Cannon Soldier, I feel like you're also doing fine there. So, I don't know. Maybe it would have been good to just attack into that, but tough to say. This isn't a deck you see often, I think. Yeah, they are thinking in main 2 here, probably what to commit because they got a full hand right now. So if they don't want to lose cards, they got to commit some stuff to field. It looks like they are indeed going to do that and then pass back to Soul so that, 6 cards in hand, they don't have to discard. Pretty good. And the IO does drop. The funny thing about IO now for Soul is if they've got other copies of IO, then they just turn basically into Magic Jammers because you can't really keep them around for long enough to pay for them because you'd lose. But they can just be up until your standby phase. So interesting to see how the card changes over the course of the game. Yeah, very interesting board state. Now, also, Soul has Cannon Soldier and Grave of their own. So if Danny has like Reborn at any point to bring back that, then that's going to be really bad for Soul as well. Looks like Soul is going to preemptively flip up the Morphing Jar number 2. And now they both have to go until they get 2 monsters on field here. Probably just trying to mill Danny out a little bit, but it is a bit tricky. There's nothing like Book of Tayu to really, cause these mill decks to have combos really. So yeah, it's just going to be a little bit awkward, I think. G-Lam says, but manga and Germ are cards I wish were better longer. I remember people at locals ran Giant Germ when Phantom Darkness dropped, hoping it would be 3 darks quickly for dad. That is very funny. And, I mean, I can't even blame them for that because Germ is like such an interesting card. And I do think that it's good through a lot of DM era formats and should be experimented with more a bit. But yeah, it's still cool to see people experimenting with it well into the GX era. Unfortunately, that Reborn there is gone now for Danny, so they lose that outcome to victory. But there's still plenty of ways that they can actually win here. Did Soul hit the Cyberjar as well? Okay, it looks like they're just still milling. Okay, so Sangan will also come out set along with the Tomato. They come out set. So hopefully they know this and they're just I'm just gonna message to say that they come out set. Oops. Soul 65. Yeah. Because they are set here because of jar number 2, so you can't really pull off any like OTKs with them if that was going to be the case. Which they're playing turn 8, so they might be going for that sort of thing. Yeah, and there they go. Yeah. I forget if Morphing Jar number 2 has you shuffle them up as well, but I don't think it does. I think it just sets them to field. Most of the time with Morphing Jar number 2, you're like just getting 1 monster every time. Yeah, like even in the very cheesy Morphing Jar number 2, like all-out attack decks that come way later in the game's history and are just sort of like funny YouTube combo videos, where basically they just have the 1 Morphing Jar number 2 in their deck and they just play all-out attacks, which is a continuous trap that flips them up when they're special summoned. And so you just keep special summoning out the 1 Morphing Jar number 2 and you eventually mill your opponent to death. But those generally don't even wind you in the situation where you're sending back 2 monsters at a time. Yeah, Soul does get a search here. It's just not sure how many good targets they've got left. Yeah, they're gonna search at another witch, not a bad target. Just deck thin a bit. Pot of Greed's pretty good too. And will Soul be able to claw their way out of this? Is the question. Gonna be really tough. If they get card destruction, that could help a little bit here, because Danny has a lot of cards in hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards in hand. So if you get a couple card destructions, maybe a Spirit Queen to get back Cyber Jar, maybe there's something that could happen here, but it just is really, really tricky for Soul here, and there probably isn't a good way out of this for them. And yeah, for people out there wondering, like, whether Danny's even running Cannon Soldier, Cannon Soldier is basically a mandatory inclusion in this format. For a lot of early DM formats, after its introduction, Cannon Soldier is just so good at being a search off of Sang and Witch, which are both at 2 copies, and just being a way to like deal that last bit of damage to your opponent just out of nowhere, basically. And so decks do play Cannon Soldier, and it seems underwhelming if you're looking at these formats from the outside, but after you like play these formats a bit more, like it's such a powerful card. Like it's really hard to sort of articulate perfectly why it's so good, but it just is really, really good. Heavy is going to be pretty rough for Soul here, but it looks like they just set a bluff Chain Energy and a Solemn, so not much they can really do there. While Dark Hole probably will be the end of the game. If Danny does not have a monster in that hand, then that is going to be very surprising. Saying in there, we'll get a search. And searching Spear Cretin, I can set up the Cretin lock here, because you do have another Cretin engrave. But yeah, there's a Witch, and unless Soul's playing Karibo, yep, it looks like they're not, so that will be the end of the game there. The Joker says very few people played it during the format, and that is something that I believe. I've seen some historical deck lists, and a lot of them weren't really valuing the card as it should be valued. But in sort of retro evaluation of the format, a lot of people have come around to how good that card actually is. Okay, it looks like Aratus won against Dump Truck there. I assume because now they're playing against Ghost. So it looks like Ghost also won to Patrick Starr. So wow, this local's going pretty quickly there. So let's just dive into that game and see how that's going now. And yeah, let's see if there are any others. Okay, it looks like, yeah, it's just that. But Aratus is also playing the Momongas here. This is a very powerful card. And an underrated card in this format, I think. There's Call, there's MST. That will clear the Call there, unfortunately, for Rain Dance. And it looked like Aratus will be able to get in here for another 1,000. Aratus has a full board, but they're fine committing this, so it might mean that they've got IO or double IO even. So we'll have to see. G-Lam says, Tomato, Sangam, Witch, and it's a machine for Limiter, another super neat card. Yeah, in this format especially, Cannon Soldier is super powerful. Like, I think it honestly peaks in this format, because you can use it as a body for Limiter, and then even if your Limiter OTK didn't get there just through damage alone, you can also then tribute off the remaining monsters to deal that additional damage that way. Premature Burial, also another very interesting card here. Lets you get back a monster from grave, but it is very weak to Imperial Order, and yeah, that just shuts it down. Also very weak to MST as well. So I'm not like the biggest fan of Premature Burial, but I think in a Machine OTK deck, it is actually very good, because you just want to set up these plays. And also, like, if you're playing Trunade as well, which I do like Trunade in Machine OTK decks. If you are playing Trunade, then it gets even better, because you can pre-mat back a monster, Trunade, then use another pre-mat there. And that's just really, really good. So Aratus letting the Imperial Order drop there. And this might mean that they've got a spell they want to use here. Could mean trouble for Rain Dance. Yeah, Reborn is a very, very good spell. Bring back their own Mechanical Chaser there. And I wonder what the sets are. Yep, okay, Nimble Manga. Oh, we probably knew about that. Or we might have known about that if we were watching for longer there. But yeah, Rain Dance will just take it all, 1750. And they will get to search with the Witch. So they could potentially search out a Mechanical Chaser if they want to. But Aratus is in a very, very good spot. Like, they've got, okay, Cyberjar is another search that you might want to do. Because Cyberjar will clear Aratus' board here. Oh, Morphing Jar. That is insane. Yeah, that's really, really good for Aratus there. Radiance will lose the 2 monsters he had in hand. And they will gain 5 cards, but Aratus has the priority to use those 5 cards. And Blah, welcome to the stream. So you lost to Hoy, or
2 close duels, yes.
okay?
He Karibo'd me on my attempt at end the game, and then Dark Hole Mahavilo Acts of Despair.
Yeah. I mean, the Equip OTK strategies can be pretty explosive here. But,
yes,
brutal. A hand rip right after a Morphing Jar. And a painful choice on top of it. Wow. That is pretty wild there. And yeah, this is what you do in this format with painful choice. You just send Jinzo and some hand rips. It looks like they're sending a Dust Tornado as well.
And a random card, depending on your hand.
Well, yeah, and we're seeing that here. So what you basically gotta give them. I mean, Dust Tornado is probably the least impactful that Aratus can have, but Aratus also clearly knows that. So they must have some plan here. But if you give them a Jinzo, they contribute it out, or they can just, bring back the other Jinzo from grave if they've got a way to bring it back. So this is looking really bad for Rain Dance. Not much they can do. Also, we were talking about how interactive this format is with like the chaining that you can do. Another thing you can do with Jinzo is you can actually chain Call of the Haunted to your opponent's trap, targeting your Jinzo and trying to bring it back to basically negate their trap. And that can lead to even more of these sorts of long chain links in this format. And it's just a blast to do that, I think. And Reborn is targeting Jinzo here. Now, if Aratus has a Call of the Haunted, they can fire it in. They are indeed firing it on the Jinzo. Does Radiance... Oh, it looks like they do not have an MST for that. I mean, that is the punish, but sometimes you just got to go for it. Yeah, it's
time for me to go.
Oh yeah, thank you for stopping by, Neb, or Hobby. And yeah,
you later, Hobby.
Hopefully you can join the next one.
Don't be a
I'm
stranger.
gonna check out the finals when I can.
Yeah, it should be pretty fun.
Hey.
I mean, the matches so far have been pretty great, but yeah, thank you for stopping by.
But yeah,
Premature Burial here. Bring back, probably Mechanical Chaser is the best pick.
I think it's the only pick, honestly, and they see as Jinzo. In which case,
you got
Witch.
Witch of the Black Forest as well, so
yeah,
you could bring back that to be a bit more resilient in case your opponent does have spell and trap removal for the free mana on your next turn. But I think they probably picked Mechanical Chaser because and here they go. They're going to fire Limiter, it seems. In damage step, you got to do this damage step. I mean, it doesn't really matter here because even if Aratus has like IO set, the Jinzo shuts it off. But it looks like they are just going to go for that. Not sure how I feel about that play, honestly. I think it might have been better to just attack Mechanical Chaser into Morphing Jar and then save the Limiter removal for next turn. But I guess you're playing around if your opponent has like heavy, or if they've got other ways to clear
Mystical Space Typhoon.
Yeah.
If it were a Monster Reborn, that'd have been perfectly fine. Because you wouldn't have to worry about MST on the Premature Burial if you just set the Limiter removal.
Yeah. So, it's a bit of an awkward play, but I get why they did it. But it looks like they're just firing IO now. I mean, that won't do anything under Jinzo, but maybe they're just admitting defeat here. But yeah, it won't matter here either way because, IO comes up in standby, let's say, and then Jinzo comes down, but like then Aratus activates whatever spell they want because IO is shut off by the Jinzo. Yeah.
That's the lock.
Doesn't matter. It's game 1 anyways. Okay.
That's the lockdown.
Yep. I mean,
the
that's
first example of it.
Well, that's part of the fun of this format. I mean, you got interesting interactions between a variety of cards that are all unlimited. So cool to see. Let's see. Do we not have another? Okay, we got Soul versus Danny again. I forgot about that one. And it looks like Soul's in a bit of a better spot than they were in the first game here. Although it does seem like, they tried saying about Chain Energy, didn't quite work. But yeah, Spirit Queen is pretty good to have on field, especially when you got a Cyberjar. You can do your milling shenanigans if you want to. Yeah, PJ of Arts of Darkness says, the format with triple IO, haha. I know very little about PSV format, let alone Imperial. I think that, like, Imperial's basically watered down Android. So if you know about Android, like, Imperial is pretty similar. PSV, though, is a different beast entirely. Like, having access to triple Jinzo, triple IO, triple Call of the Haunted, triple Premature Burial, triple Limiter Removal, there just is so much you can do with that. And it's just so cool.
Yeah.
And it's a much faster format because you have all those sorts of powerful tools all at 3. But it also is a very, very interactive format where you have like these chain links going up pretty high for early DM. So still cool
The
to see.
the tempo potentially swings depending on what's on field at any given time. An IO will slow the game down to a crawl because no spells, and the spells are the most impactful cards in this format.
Well, IO
without
also
fail.
has less impact this format than it does in pretty much every other format where it's legal because 3 Jinzo is so accessible. And you've also got 3 Call of the Haunted to bring it out.
Not everyone will be playing 3 Jinzo though, at least not game 1. You'll see.
Well, what you don't really side in a 3rd Jinzo, because you
Oh,
don't
you
have like
can.
trap focused
Stall.
decks as much.
Stall decks
but
exist.
yeah,
But
you
you
don't
can
really
have
trap
like
focused stall decks as much.
it
with, like,
exists.
trap
You
burn
can
and
put
stuff.
it there
Like,
just in case.
Obviously, there's a theoretical chance of this happening, and of course, the format is still
Stall.
very underexplored. So who's
Yeah.
to say what
And
the
burn
best
exists.
side decks is?
We have burn
But
as well.
yeah, but burn doesn't really use
That
its
Jin-
traps. It uses chain energy, things like that. So you don't generally side in a 3rd Jinzo against burn, because it's not really useful against burn in this incarnation of the deck. But
Oh,
PGR Darkness says just bring a metal detector. Yeah, I think metal detector is legal. I think it did come out in PSV. I could be wrong though. But yeah, metal detector, most powerful underused card here. So we'll get a search off that saying in though. So kind of an awkward Jinzo to do here, but it looks like Danny's trying to go for a lot of damage here. Maybe they could potentially pull it off. If they've got limiter removal. If they've got like premature burial. Now premature burial won't quite do it, but yeah, I don't think they can. Well, if they get double limiter, then that's just the end of the game.
yeah, very easily. This is the main reason Jinzo's limited, with limiter removal.
Well, it's the main reason.
Yeah,
limiter
Jinzo,
removal
multiple Jinzo is
it's the
kind of
reason why limiter
ridiculous.
removal is limited.
And both
but-
are limited for this reason.
No,
Jinzo
Jinzo's
because
limited
it's a
it shuts
trap.
down every trap in the game. That's why Jinzo's
Yes.
limited. If
you also have
if Jinzo was just a 2400 beat stick that's a machine, then it would not be limited. Lunar removal would just be limited. But because
we'd still be
Jinzo-
seeing Summon Skull if that was the case.
GLAM asks, when was Acid Rain printed? Lol. I'm pretty sure it wasn't printed for this format. But it was like a weird promo. So I don't quite remember when exactly it was printed or legal. But I don't think it was legal for this format. I could be wrong.
2005
Yep,
Duelist
so-
League Series 8 participation card.
Yeah, so definitely
It's an
not
old
legal for this
card.
format.
Very old.
Yeah,
But
it
it also
gets
just
it when
was
it
not
gets it.
given to us.
Yeah.
It just wasn't given to us.
Yep. Soul's thinking here though. It looks like that Jinzo was just for an attack in, and maybe Danny's just like, you got to get aggressive against burn, and that's fair, especially because Snatch Steal is not really that useful against this deck. It can have its edge cases here and there, but generally Snatch Steal is not going to be that useful. So they just used it while they could, I guess. It looks like Sword's coming down here as well.
2 Swords also has an impact in this format,
Yeah,
even
somewhat.
with 3 IO.
Yeah, I mean, it's awkward because you've got the IO, you got triple MST, you've got heavies ×2. Also, some people are playing Dust Tornado to also just act as more spell and trap removal that's interactive or reactive, that is.
That gets around IO if it's already activated, yes.
Well, there's that too.
Oh.
Knock on a tomato. I mean, obviously not the most high impact knock target, but it's definitely one that you want to do. And also, Nobleman of Process also had 3 copies in this format. So very good point to note.
Knocking the tomato prevents another Sangan or Witch or even a Giant Germ.
Yep. So it's definitely not like low impact. It's just, if you're Danny, you're probably hoping to hit like a Cretan or a Morphing Germ or 2 we've seen Soul play as well. So yeah. PJ Archer says, get out the Trap Masters. Haha. That would be a very funny tech in this format. Unfortunately, Trap Master is far beyond its prime here, but still interesting to think about. But let's see what Soul's. Yeah, Soul's just gonna set another. Looks like they're not drawing more chain energies and things like that. So they might be
Yes.
leaning
Swords.
more in to the mill strategy here.
Yeah, Swords going through its second turn.
Yep. Let's see what Danny does here. Looks like they're gonna flip up Witch, and this might mean that they've got
they
a way
have-
to deal with Swords now.
Or they're going to drop a cannon soldier and then do something. I don't know.
Yeah, then you
what
don't
he
need
has.
to flip up the Witch, right?
Yeah.
So they might just be like the thing is you can't like bait out interaction with this because traps are shut off by Jinzo. So yeah,
And
PJ
even if
Interactive,
Jinzo wasn't here, you're not trap holding a witch.
yeah, but you could be trying to bait it out. But yeah, I'd agree. I think trap holding a witch is something for very extreme circumstances. It looks like Dane's just gonna set one and pass though, so kind of curious why they went for that. Unless they're on some very interesting tech. But PJ of Darkness says, "Yeah, I'm memeing," and yeah, I get your memeing. I like to play along with it just because it's fun to ride the memes out, you know. Soul's thinking here again. There's only one more turn left on Swords, so they need to have something here. A True Nade will extend the turns on Swords, though. So
if no, yeah, definitely. Yep.
That will buy a little bit more time, but
yep. This combo is one of the main reasons we have Swords at 1 in the first place.
Well,
Sword stalls, True Nade bounces cards.
I honestly
bounces swords
think,
in particular.
Well, I honestly think in a lot of DMR formats, like especially Android and beyond, I think Swords could be unlimited, and not have much of an impact on the game. Maybe that's a hot take, I don't know, but personally, I think that like you've got enough spell and trap removal at this point that Swords does not need to be limited. And also the stall decks are not quite good enough to actually take advantage of that. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you ask. But as a degenerate, like I do like when sorts of these stallier, burnier decks are a bit more viable. So to me, I think it'd be fun to have them get a little bit of a buff that probably won't change too much.
I think Soul doesn't realize we made a change on the Shallow Grave. It was yesterday, but
is Soul playing?
It was in the ruling page. Yeah, I played a copy, but if he's playing with Spear Cretin, Cyberjar,
well, it looks like
that's useful.
Shallow Grave wouldn't really matter in this situation. That
not in this situation.
But yeah,
no. But if he was playing Mill,
yeah. For people who don't know, there was some investigation done into the ruling on Shallow Grave in the TCG, and because there were no rulings initially for the TCG and PSV format, right? Because a lot of the
PSV
periods rulings are sort of lost time, and also because these cards weren't legal until the next limited list dropped.
And that's when the rulings for them were set.
Well, yeah, that's
so
why,
to go to the OCG
here.
rulings.
That's what I'm explaining here. So we default to the OCG rulings for this card in this format because it's introduced in PSV. And so there was debate over what it actually was ruled as in the OCG at this time and stuff, and different sources saying different things. But to the best of our knowledge from what people were able to dig up and find, it looks like Shallow Grave will work in this format, even if your opponent or you don't have a monster in grave. As long as one
you
player
must
has
have a monster.
Are you sure that's what the ruling said? Because to me, it seems like they ruled it that one player had to have a monster in grave, but it didn't necessarily have to be you.
True.
True. Yeah.
But you'll be playing it as you had to put a monster in the graveyard.
You're not going to wind up in the situation where you're going to be activating it when you have no monster in grave to give your opponent back a monster. But I'm just saying what the ruling that we've sort of uncovered is. So, but yeah, PJ Director says, I was playing a 2012 format 2 months ago and someone whipped out a Swords on me. Haha, you never know when it shows up. And that's true. Swords does see some play outside of these old DMR formats, occasionally in some decks. I've just always found it very underwhelming in a lot of later formats. And of course, there are exceptions here and there where people can find genius ways to tech in Swords into things. But oftentimes it feels like, for instance, if you're playing like modern Yu-Gi-Oh, right? And you attack in to your opponent and they flip Mirror Force, right? You're not going to be expecting that, and so it will probably clear some monsters on your side of the field. But Mirror Force also isn't necessarily that good in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! So like you don't necessarily play around it. It's a similar thing with swords, I think, in a lot of more modern formats. And I say more modern, but this is from a DM era perspective. So Faith is going to be really good here, getting back Heavy Storm, able to clear the entire board, and Soul can't flip up IO to stop that because that Jinzo will shut down any IOs.
Rain Dance lost to Aratus, if you haven't seen that yet.
Good to know. I'll put that in to the chart here. And it looks like Aratus will be the first person in the finals of this locals. And cleared an IO of their own, but they likely have some more where those came from. But it also cleared a True Nade, which is very nice to see if you're Danny. Like you want those True
With Jinzo on the field, you're just setting it, and if they clear it, you flip the IO. That's the lockdown. Call the Haunted, multiple. You can switch between them as you wish.
Yeah. G-Lam said, I ran Ceasefire in Tengu Plant format, and I cheesed so many wins off of shutting down Raikos and incidental ship damage. Another PSV hidden gem. Yeah, Ceasefire is also legal at 3 copies in this format.
Yes, indeed.
So Burn is, potentially buffed by that as well.
And also they can work with Spear Cretin, because Spear Cretin is, at this point, the only flip monster not affected by Ceasefire.
Yep. Because it effect triggers in the grave. So, oh man, this is going to be insane for Danny here. This might just be the end of the game. They're change harding the set. They'll probably see what it is here. But the Cyber Jar is in grave. If it's Spear Cretin, you don't want to flip it up. But it looks like it's just a
Spear Cretin. If Spear Cretin is set, we're going to be seeing Cyber Jar.
Probably, yeah.
For sure.
And it looks like that is
yes, it is.
Spear Cretin. Now, there's the choice of going for Cyber Jar or just going for the lock, the Spear Cretin loop here. So we'll have to decide which one they want to do. But we'll have to see what
it's a risk.
Looks like Danny picked the wrong set to Change of Heart there, because you'd want to hit the Spear Cretin instead. Looks like they're going to go for Cyber Jar here indeed instead of the Cretin lock. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing because it does clear the Jinzo. However, Danny can just tribute off almost his entire board here to the Cannon Soldier here, just to sort of reduce the impact of the Cyber Jar. Now they could choose just to attack it here and hope to get more aggressive cards and just hit in for a lot of damage, but I think that is probably better just to tribute off the Cannon Soldiers and stuff.
Probably because both players will be getting 6 cards in that case.
5. Well, yeah, because the Witch's Surge, yeah. But
but he'll be
I think the better option, because like if you're expecting the number, like if you say what's your expected value on damage, right, after attacking into a Cyber Jar, you're probably not going to beat like 2,000. And Cannon Soldier tributing off 4 monsters here will beat that. You could also tribute off 5 monsters here as well if you so wished. Although Danny might just want to keep like a Witch of the Black Forest on field just to bait out that Cyber Jar flip. Unclear here, but we'll have to see what happens.
There's the Jinzo.
Is getting searched there by Soul.
I see what he's going for. He's going to hope he gets a monster to tribute the Jinzo off with.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what Danny tributes here, Soul could also just summon out Jinzo to deprive Danny of more cards and attack in with Jinzo. But I feel like it probably is better just to flip up Cyber Jar and use the cards that you get. Especially as a burn player, I think that's the better option. But which will get a search for Danny. And now, I mean, honestly, the question is there, though. Do you even search, like, do you even tribute the Witch? Like, I think there is an argument to be made just to tribute the Jinzo and the Cannon Soldier, leave the Witch on field and pass back to Soul. The idea being that you want more monsters to be hit off Cyber Jar, so that way you're not just left defenseless after the Cyber Jar flips up. So, I think there is an argument here for not tributing the Witch and just leaving it on field, forcing Soul to pop it, potentially getting more good Cyber Jar monsters on field here as well. But it also looks like Danny's not tributing off the Cannon Soldier either. Kind of an interesting choice here.
Okay.
Looks like Cyber Jar is going to
as expected,
up, and that is going to pop
Cyber Jar.
Field. Yeah,
it detonates.
I really don't understand why Danny didn't tribute off that Cannon Soldier as well, because you knew it's gonna go away because of the Cyber Jar.
Yes.
So why not get that additional 500 damage, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, Just Desserts and
Oh.
Ceasefire there are pretty good.
Oh.
But, Jinzo, Limiter Removal, those are pretty good as well. So it looks like Mechanical Chaser will hit the field here. And I feel like...
that will limit
Let's see.
Ceasefire's
So,
power a bit.
Just Desserts deals 500, right? Ceasefire, if we look at the monsters that Soul has, that deals like, maybe, let's say 1500 if they commit another monster to field here. And they're committing them in attack too, so maybe they're planning on tripping them off with the cannon soldiers here.
Jinzo's also present, so
That's
in
true.
in Soul's hand.
You could.
So he'll
he'll
want to probably tribute the Sangan, attack into the Mechanical Chaser to try and keep the Jinzo in hand.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
That
I
is
see
an
what's
option as
happening
well.
now. This will maybe be GG.
Yeah, I mean, there are potential options that Soul could have in hand that do win them the game here. It's just a little bit awkward because you don't know what the sets are right now. So I think you do probably have to... Oh, whoops. Looks like we disconnected from DB for a second there. But looks like
I'm still
everything's
watching.
back. No, I know.
Oh,
I'm
never
saying
mind.
on my end, we disconnected. So yeah, looks like they're gonna add back those burn spells. Jinzo MST also going back to Danny's hand there. Reborn for Jinzo. Yep, that will be pretty good there. I mean, this will probably be the end of the game because you tribute off the other Sangan for Jinzo. That's 2950 plus 1400. That deals 4350. So yeah, that's the end of the game.
It'll depend on if a limiter removal set or not.
That's true. Limiter removal is something to play around here. And we did see that Danny is on a limiter removal because they did add it to hand, but I think you do just have to go for it. If you're wrong here, or like you take 1300, right? But the Mechanical Chaser dies the end of the turn anyways. So I mean, I honestly don't think you're like in too bad of a spot.
This is a mistake.
I don't think. Yeah, I think that this is an awkward turn here. But limiter removal will get fired. Will go on the Mechanical Chaser there, buffing it up to 3700. So yeah, and that will deal 1300 to Soul. I mean, I guess this keeps their traps online, but do you really need to keep your traps online here? Especially knowing what Danny has. I mean, I don't know.
Yes, I'm expecting he got chain energy, yes?
Yeah. I mean, you
off the side, which I say yeah.
Yeah, but also
We're
Danny
gonna
has
see...
MST, so
yeah.
But there goes a Sangan tribute off the cannon soldier, getting a search here. So now you can set that search potentially. Potentially it's the third Spear Cretin. That would be a potential option here.
Yes, you can, as mentioned before, you can trigger it off a ceasefire.
Yes.
Well, you can get it flipped up.
Yeah. And you'd have to do that because you do know about the Nobleman in Danny's hand as well. So, you got to sort of preemptively do that. Or, I mean, you could trust maybe that Danny doesn't have a way to get Jinzo on field very easily. But if they do, then that's really awkward.
Nimble Momanga.
Okay, Momanga could get them some more life points here. Not a bad option, I don't think.
Yes, he has to set cards now.
Yep, because
to get at 6 or under.
You got over 7 cards in hand. So it looks like Soul's going to set 2, set 3. Will we see set 4 and then activate chain energy? We'll have to see. Set 4, yep, and there's the chain energy. It looks like they're going to pass.
And there's the second one.
So, Mechanical Chaser will get destroyed here. Yep, yes. And that will go. And we'll have to see what
next
Danny
turn
does here. Danny has used up 1 Heavy Storm. There still is another in deck. That would be pretty brutal if Soul encountered that. But yeah, there's a couple different things that Danny could do here. I mean, probably start with the MST on the chain energy no matter what, right?
Probably. Unless IO's set, in which case, yeah, that's not going to happen.
You still got to bait out the IO. The IO shuts off the chain energy, and then you do your plays as normal. I mean,
as normal as you can, anyway.
Well, yeah, without sort of powerful spells. But Fisher is getting fired here first, probably to bait out the IO if there is an IO. I think this is a smart play to do. Needham says, I teched a knock in my Evil Swarmed list, and if they didn't have a set, I'd go into Maestroke, so it was never a dead card. Yeah, Maestroke is a very versatile card. And that's part of
No,
why.
Danny doesn't have to
Uh,
do that.
G-Lam says, love when some of the earliest cards see play 10, 15 years later. Yeah, I always find it really cool to see what people sort of dig into the tech there. Yeah, but Danny did not take 5 here because it was set on field. Oh, he's paying 5 for...
He did it when he flipped
for the
Fissure.
MST. Yeah. No, but it looks like he's doing it for the MST.
Okay.
Right? Because
That'll
the
clear
Sangan effect happened last turn. And the 500 there is for the MST. So, I mean, if so he should have.
Yeah,
gained,
see?
Yeah. So let's send Danny a message.
Already did it.
Okay. Well, let's see if he. Yep, there he goes. So yeah, because it's already on field, so you don't have to pay if you activate a card or effect already on field, which is something that burn decks do take a lot of sort of advantage of, because you've got the Spear Cretins, you've got things that can keep you playing on field without sort of having to dip into your hand. So Nobleman on the set
There's
as well.
Set.
Ceasefire, yep, will get chained. So
and he had the Critin in hand. That explains it.
Yeah. So that was the correct play for Soul to do there. PJ Arts Director said if Flip Monster were still relevant, I'm sure Knock would still be a side card. Yeah. Nobleman is a really good way to deal with Flip Monsters. And that
define
remains true for a very
relevant.
long time. So in flip focused metas, I'm sure it's very good.
We did have Guru control a while back, but
Yeah, Guru
that
could also
flipped so
quick effect
quickly.
flip up its monsters, right?
Yes, so Knock was useless.
Yeah. But
it depends on the deck.
I'm curious if it saw much play in like hat format with Geargia, or against Geargia, that is. But it's definitely a card that should be considered when there are a lot of flip monsters. And Soul's doing a big think here. That's an interesting outcome there. They're thinking, checking their graveyard.
You can tribute the Cretin to trigger it with
true.
Jinzo.
And then you could potentially bring out like a Cyberjar or another Cancelled potentially. The issue is that you can't then flip up the monster that you bring back set off the Cretin the turn it's brought back. So
at this point, the question is more, does Soul have removal?
Well, at this point, I'm just wondering what Soul's thinking about. So it could just be firing the MST in the end phase here, but that's awkward because in this format, MST can actually be used the turn it's set. So you might not want to just blind MST a back row. But that might be what they're thinking about.
Unless you only have one back row set.
Okay, looks like they're going for call. So this does also play into the MST, but Soul's probably thinking like, if you got MST, you got MST. So it looks like that will be fine on Danny's end there. So we'll be able to bring back the Cancelled. That will also be able to trigger the Cretin next turn.
Yes, we can see where he's going with this.
But it is.
He's going to probably tribute the Cretin to summon Jinzo and summon another monster.
Well, he doesn't
have enough pressure
from
to break
hand,
through.
Sure. But it looks like that's not case there. Ceasefire coming down, and that'll be 2,000 damage plus more if that does connect, and that set monster on Danny's side of the field is an effect monster. So it probably is.
I doubt it's Chaser.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yes, but I see what's happening now. He had another monster, so he's gonna tribute with Cannon Soldier.
Yeah, I mean, this is the end of the game, so I'm not sure why Danny's running out longer here. But Aratus says, Knock was cited a lot historically in Hat. I think it's not as popular anymore, though. And that makes sense with more experimentation. People can find different things. But yeah, G-Lam says, I got to look into some modern Hat stuff. I played back then and remember hating the format. I think that Hat is definitely a format that's not for everyone, from what I've seen. But I do know that a lot of people really do like the format. And it's had some interesting developments that I've heard about. For instance, the Hat deck has sort of become a cat deck now, which is, instead of hand artifact trap tricks, people start playing card D artifacts trap tricks. And so, there's sort of shifts in the metagame and stuff. And I am very excited to eventually get to Hat, in 20 years when I reach
modern Hat. Is a kind of a different beast from historical Hat.
Yeah, just like
that's true for a lot of formats.
Yeah, just like with pretty much every
Goat
format.
Isn't even Goat control dominated anymore.
Yeah, I mean, even diving into new formats that people haven't really experimented with. I mean, like we've been doing with like Treasure and Imperial and things that weren't even on format library before we dove into them. Like people adapt modern deck building sensibilities and the fact that you have access to all the cards in the format to make radically different decks than were played at the time, and radically better decks as well.
Yes.
So these
Partially
things
that,
do
but
change over time.
yeah. In these early formats, we're also seeing some classic sensibilities, at least in like not how they do it in 2002. Obviously, many people weren't that experienced with deck building at the time, but like you're seeing people build as if it would be like in the late 2000s, early 2010s. This is specifically 2002 and early 2003, this period. Later on, like with Breaker and with Scientist and Chaos and all of that, we're seeing more modern thinking because those decks are more like modern decks than a lot of earlier and later builds.
BGR for Darkness says, heck, even Yugi Kaiba has evolved a lot. The smallest card pool. And yeah, I mean, it's wild to see the current meta of Yugi Kaiba. I mean, stall decks were not on anyone's radar in 2002. And even for a lot of historical sort of exploration of Yugi Kaiba, people weren't, they weren't tuned in to how good Ultimate Offering was in a stall sort of deck.
Yeah.
And so it really has changed a lot. And I'm excited for there's currently a Yugi Kaiba tournament going on in the Yugi Kaiba Land Discord server. And I'm excited to see how that potentially shifts the meta as well.
I was just about to mention that. But yeah, Exodia existed, obviously. And Exodia was played in its stall form
in which form?
During historically. About? Critter later on.
Oh yeah, Critter.
But
there's
Yugi,
a big change in Exodia.
And if people were playing Exodia and Yugi Kaiba, which we have no idea because we have no knowledge of it, they were probably playing they're probably playing still stall. That's the only form you can really play Exodia.
I mean,
in that
I think
format.
If people played it in the modern day Yugi Kaiba, they'd also be playing stall Exodia because you can't really play it a different way. I mean, you could potentially, if you want to go super in on comboing, you could potentially play like last will to get out pieces and then hand them back to hand. But that's really bad. Like that's you need all the dominoes to fall the exact right way for that to actually go through, and it very rarely will.
I've been experimenting with Exodia and Yugi Kaiba, and Ultimate Offering is a godsend.
I mean, Ultimate Offering allows you to stall. The issue that Exodia has in Yugi Kaiba, though, is that, like, first of all, there's no way to search the pieces, so you're just hard drawing into them. And you're basically playing a worse stall deck because of that. Like, if you're going to play a deck that plays like that, why not just play stall mill? Because Exodia hard loses to stall mill anyways, because card destruction is in the stall mill deck. You're eventually going to draw it. And if you know your opponent's on Exodia, or even if you don't, you might go for the card destruction earlier. So
it's a bad matchup against stall mill, but against other decks,
like the Exodia,
not everything.
No, it's just a bad deck. Like, and that's not a bad thing for a deck to be bad. But like,
it's better than we think. Actually, it's not going to win tournaments probably. For one thing, I've been playing with it, and I've basically won almost every duel 1 test.
Really?
The problem with it.
Who have you been playing with? Is the
Soul Control, beatdown decks, anything other than stall mill, because obviously I'm going to lose, and there's no point in trying unless I want to test the side deck.
And you're telling me, you've gone on an undefeated tear with the deck against Soul Control, and like
not undefeated, but I have a winning record with it.
Then what exactly is
in duel 1?
How many times?
In duel 1, like 5-2 or so. The problem has been in duel 1. No, in duel 1. I've been trying to explain.
Oh, that's a good point.
The problem,
McGee says Yugi was undefeated with Exodia. That's very true.
Yes.
So maybe Yugi knew something.
I've been trying to explain that. It's not. I haven't been as consistent in duel 2 and duel 3 with the side deck because I have a conversion side deck that's meant to deal with stall mill. It's been more iffy. I've won matches, but I've also lost them.
So what's your record in matches then?
Closer to 50-50.
Okay. So generally when people talk about, the records, they're not talking about games, they're talking about matches.
Yes, I know. I'm saying Exodia in particular, I've been able to consistently win with duel 1, game 1. But it's less consistent once you go into the side deck. You mentioned that in your video, but I've been having more success with it than
here's
expected.
I don't think the math adds up if you've won 5 single games of the matches and only lost 2 single games of the matches. Then wouldn't that mean
call
that
the haunted?
You either only lost 1 match or you lost no matches then, right? So
you have to analyze not just the matches, but how the matches go on at the same time.
So are you
that's why I mentioned the game 1.
So you're only talking about game 1 in terms of winning or losing game 1.
Yes, the deck is it seems to be a good singles deck.
Okay.
Not so great of a match deck.
Well, when they bring Yu-Gi Kai to Master Duel,
yes.
then we'll look into it then. But let's move on to more PSV format discussion here instead.
Yes,
and also some
while you were while we were arguing, All the Haunted was flipped on a Monster Reborn.
Yep, and that
to bring back a tomato and revive the Jinzo.
Yep, and that's sort of what we were talking about earlier with like the interactivity of this format. Like you do have these chains, which Jinzo warps everything because once Jinzo's on field, traps are shut down. So you've got to either stop Jinzo from hitting the field if you got traps, or you got to fire the traps in response to when Jinzo hits the field in some way. And you don't always get a chance to do that, but you know, sometimes you do, and we did see that happen there. Jinzo will be able to be summoned out here, tribute off that witch. That's pretty good. There are also some comments I want to mention in the comments here. We see PJ After Darkness saying, to be fair, that UO printing made it freaking confusing. And yeah, it was pretty confusing at the time. I mean, people even thought that like your opponent could also use the effect, but there's no like hard evidence that that was how it was ruled. So in the modern time,
not at all.
We don't, you know, sort of do that ruling. But
yeah, they reprinted Ultimate Offering in the starter deck just to clarify this.
In which starter deck? Because you mean they
reprinted
the starter deck?
Which one? I forget which one because Ultimate Offering
came in the starter deck originally. So do you mean like a reprint of that original?
Deck, or do you mean their second reprint that supposedly happened in May.
Okay, so
where they changed Lord of D as well.
Yeah. Okay, I was just trying to clarify that.
Yeah, they changed Ultimate Offering to clarify that further.
Yeah.
So it'd be more obvious.
Which coming down here, attacking in for 1100, very good. But Soul's thinking, so they might not. Okay, looks like they are indeed going to take that. And G-Lam says, budgets were a thing back then, and it definitely impacted deck building. Why did you only play one JD? Because that's all I could afford, bro. And yeah, I agree. And it's one of the most refreshing things about revisiting these formats, in my opinion, because, you know, I, like many others, was a kid at the time that these things were happening. So, like, I couldn't play, like, full power Chaos in Chaos format. Like, I didn't even go to competitive events because I just could not compete. I would just play casually with friends and like, you know, we'd buy the starter decks, we'd buy the structure decks, we'd buy packs and build from what we got from the packs. But like I couldn't compete at a competitive level. And, you know, now going back, I mean, sure, we've, you know, a lot of us have like more money now that could potentially go into buying these cards, but also we have online resources where you don't necessarily have to, you know, break the bank to make a deck. And that's one of the most fun things about these formats is going back with unlimited cards. So it's very, very cool to see.
And explore some things.
Yeah, exactly.
And some ideas that you might not have been able to.
Even with the
or didn't have the knowledge
to. Even with the modern format, like you know, people still test on Dueling Book before committing to buying a deck because they want to know, you know, are these ratios good? Do I like this sort of deck? Do I want to commit the money to paying for it?
If they pay at all.
Well, if you're bringing an event to an event, you likely do have to pay unless you're stealing for the deck, in which case I do not condone stealing for the deck.
Obviously not. Yeah. Oh, wait, this is Yu-Gi. This is a card game.
Yeah.
We shouldn't say that so soon.
I have heard some stories of people having their stuff stolen, which is, you know, just very, very terrible. I mean, we're already a small enough community. We don't need to, you know, we don't need to have people stealing cards from other people, stealing things from other people. I mean, that's just very bleak. But you don't wind that up on a you know, online community like we got here. But GLM says a card I wish was printed much earlier than it was, Forbidden Lance. Yeah, Forbidden Lance is a super fascinating card. And it would have been cool to see if it actually saw play in these older formats because, you know, things like Rush Recklessly occasionally see play in certain decks. And Forbidden Lance is like Rush Recklessly mixed with like, just other things. And it's like, it's cool to see if like, okay, would people play it because it does modify the attacks, and that is an important thing, or like at least a better thing in this format than it is in some others. But also like its secondary effect is very good too. So it'd be cool to see.
Evolution.
Evolution
of cards like Rush Recklessly and Shrink.
No, yeah, exactly. And that's why it'd be cool to see it in an earlier format potentially. But Addison McGee says, I was a kid once too. And yeah, it's some people out there, I assume just are born into adulthood, so unfortunately.
I'm sorry, Mr. McGee.
No, but
I'm so sorry you knew that guy.
What? Oh, I knew a guy who had his cards thrown in the ocean. Damn. Yeah. I've only seen that on TV. But it can happen.
Same.
And it is pretty brutal.
Same.
Yeah, Peter After says, especially prize cards and promos, it eliminates the pay to win aspect. And I agree 100%. It's just very, very frustrating when that happens. Call the Haunted coming down here.
Ooh, pressure.
If it brings back the Jinzo, then that will shut off the IO, and then the premature burial will be able to go through. But what was premature burial targeting? That had to be declared beforehand. Was premature burial targeting which? I mean, I trust that Soul's like not trying to cheat here, but it is good to actually call what premature burial is targeting beforehand, because it can come up in these games. And if Soul had targeted the Jinzo there as opposed to the Witch, then they wouldn't have been able to really do this call the Haunted player. They would have, but they would have had to let the premature burial go there.
Yes, in earlier formats before this point, it doesn't matter because you just have Monster Reborn and your opponent can't really react to that other than negation.
Yeah.
But in this format, you can chain with IO and then chain with call, the same card potentially.
It is very important to actually say what is being targeted. But they might have just been doing this anyways because getting Witch on field's good, and then if you can just bring back call, you can call the Jinzo anyways if your opponent's got like an MST to chain to the pre-mat.
Premature burial and call the haunted work very well with Witch of the Black Forest and Sangan.
Yep, because even if you're destroyed, then you get a search off it, so not bad.
Yes, and you can even, and if you use Giant Shunei to bounce back the call the haunted, which is connected to one of those cards, they'll be destroyed in search regardless, and you can set the call again.
Yeah, exactly. But Soul says you don't pay at this point, right? And Danny indeed does not pay for IO at this point in the game's
Correct.
History. Weird ruling, but it is indeed something that happens.
We recently reached Chaos format.
Yep, and that ruling
particularly
is not
late
Chaos format, so
particularly June, in which that's when it changed the maintenance costs.
Rain Dance says, I remember one of Team Jim having her Sky Striker deck stolen at a YCS during TOS format. That's awful. Yeah, it's just terrible to see what people will do. And it's just very unfortunate. The Undertaler 587 says, one time this dude took a Blue Eyes from an old man and then ripped it up. That's crazy because there are only 400 or 4 Blue Eyes in the world. And to rip up one of them, that's just wild. So it's just crazy what people do.
Ooh. And that doesn't count all the alternative arts. There are only 4 of each of those.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just gonna message Danny. It does indeed. Yeah, it does indeed negate the IO cost here.
Yes, this is also OCG, so we don't have to worry about looking at TCG.
Well, I mean, TCG would rule on it eventually, and rule the same way for the time period.
Yeah, they'd rule in the same time they'd release all the other cards, and for PSV.
Yeah,
and they made them all legal. That we're going with OCG rulings for the PSV cards, so for the most part they're the same as the TCG. It's just something like the Shallow Grave, which is different and has to be ruled as such.
Yeah. Well,
because there's no TCG ruling
niche,
yet.
So Shallow Grave.
Yeah, it's a little more niche.
Yeah.
But it's still an important ruling to look at and do properly.
Can you send IO to Grave under Jinzo?
Yes.
I don't know. Do we have a ruling on that?
Yes.
Where's that ruling from? Is it from this time period? Because I get it for when the maintenance cost is not being negated, right?
Yeah, the maintenance cost is being negated, so you don't have to pay for it, but you can still choose to send it away.
Do we have a concrete ruling on that?
This is just how it is. It's been that way for Jinzo and Io, even with the maintenance cost being paid.
Well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. With the maintenance cost being paid, then it's a different story because, you're not paying. You can choose not to pay the maintenance cost and let it go.
Yeah, I think it's
Like that's what I'm
on
saying.
there.
You get a weird situation here, specifically.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure this is how it works.
Well, pretty sure is not quite. I mean, we'll ask judges about it later, and see what happens. I don't think it will really matter too much here, as Iowa's shut off anyways, so Danny can activate spells if they want to. But yeah, it looks like that's gonna get
Oh,
into a tomato. Tomato can get out something else pretty good potentially.
yes.
Yeah,
All
but
right. He
another
hasn't.
tomato.
The train hasn't started yet, so he can do this again.
Yep.
One more time
And
before he has to go into something else.
well, the tomato has not attacked, or it has attacked into the first tomato, so you won't be able to crash into that, unfortunately, for Soul here.
Yes, this is the last tomato. He can
Yeah,
float one more time.
potentially something, an argument for having attacked him with Jinzo first, as opposed to, after, because you also do have game on board here with your other monsters. So if
Yes.
Soul had attacked him with Jinzo first, they also would have been able to do the tomato crash. I mean, I guess Soul's already got a tomato engrave, but it still might have been
Furthermore,
the better option here.
furthermore, Dark Hole has been used by Danny, so he needs Raigeki
Yeah.
to clear the Jinzo and everything else.
If he clears Witch and Saiyan, it's a bit awkward for them there. But
Yeah, a
we'll have to see
fissure
what
will
Danny
do that
does
clear
here.
Sangan guaranteed.
Also, because the IO is still up, if he clears Jinzo, then his other spells are shut off. So, bit of an interesting thing there as well.
But that's okay.
Well, it depends on what the spells are. But
yeah,
most
I
of the
mean
time
that's
you can
okay because
order it differently.
he'll only have because Soul only have 2 cards left.
Yeah, but it'll also
he'll be down.
Sangan. So the idea is that like if Danny has hand rips, right, and he wants to go, okay, fire Raigeki on your cards, then hand rip you. You can't do that. But it looks like Cannon Soldier coming out here. So I mean, okay, limiter removals getting fired now.
He's decided to clear the Jinzo.
Yeah, but I feel like it's probably better in damage step maybe, but. Looks like Cannon Soldier's going for the Sangan. They're dealing 1,800.
1,800.
And then the tomato can also attack into stuff here. Kind of an interesting sequencing. This means that Danny does not have another limit removal as well, or else they would have buffed up Cannon Soldier further, probably. But
if he did, that might have been the end of the game.
It wouldn't have been the end of the game because Cannon Soldier would have been at 5,600 attacking the Sangan. That would be 4,600 total. And Soul had 5,100 life points. But then Danny could have tributed off the Cannon Soldier main too. So yeah, that would have been the end of the game there. Although not from that attack solely, but it would have been effectively the end of the game. But looks like Tomato attacking in to Witch now. So you're clearing away the 2 recruiters there. Maybe there's a Raigeki coming later in the turn here. And that would explain why Danny went for the limit removal preemptively there to get in that damage.
Send the premature burial.
Yeah, the premature
to the graveyard.
but I assume that probably won't come up. And if it does, Soul will probably remember when they activate the True Nade not to add back the premature to hand. PGR starting to ask, can limit removals accumulate? And yes, they can. It's not like Megamorph, where it just affects the original attack. It actually will stack. So you can, if you fire 3 limit removals on a Cannon Soldier, the first one doubles it 28, next one doubles it 56, next one doubles it to 10,000, or no, 11,400, or
11,200.
No, 11,000. 200 because the 56.
Yes.
So yep.
It's the card's basically insane, but the cards that it can work with are mostly
why is MST going on call there? Don't do MST on call. The Jinzo stays.
That doesn't work.
But it looks like Danny might not have known that. In which case that's very unfortunate for them. Looks like
it's strange he doesn't though.
I mean, different people. Different people come into the game with different levels of.
Yeah, I know he's played Yada. That's why I'm saying
Cannon Soldier
he should know that.
Get destroyed here due to the limiter removal. Might just be a late night for Danny as well. So,
Yeah, he is
but,
European,
uh,
I believe.
Really? I thought he had an American accent, but either way, the Cannon Soldier will get destroyed there, and it looks like Soul is a
There it
Cannon Soldier of
is.
their own. So this is not going to go well for Danny here. And yeah, it's quite important. Maybe if they had known about the MST and call interaction, they would have attacked Cannon Soldier into the Jinzo. But
Or if destroy the premature and just let the witch
yeah, that's
search
going to be
and then
the end
ram
of the game.
Jinzo. Yes, there it
Yeah,
is.
it looks like kind of a rough ending to Danny's game here, but Soul is going to move
Unfortunate.
on there. So let's see Soul going on to the next match against Hoyt. So that
He'll
is
be
the next game we got to watch here. So
Boys playing an interesting deck.
yes, they are, and so is Soul. So it should be cool to see. Let's see when it actually gets put up there. Looks like they're probably going to be, you know, yeah. Yeah, it looks like Hoy asked, is there a problem to watch the games? I'd say if you're being like featured in the game, it's probably better to like sort of mute the stream or something while it's happening because, you know, you might be swayed by our commentary or something. But it's not like the end of the world if you are like, yeah, I mean, if you're watching the stream and you like let us know, we can also refrain from like sort of talking about what we think the best strategies or things like that are. But it's up to you really. So yeah. And it looks like Soul and Hoy are in the game here. So let's see how this one goes. We're gonna dive into it, and this will be an interesting match, one that you don't often see in this format. But then again, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, this format is still pretty underexplored. Looks like both players are sticking to the paper strat. It's serving well for them. Who's gonna break first? That's the question. It looks like they're taking a bit longer here, so one of them might have decided. And it looks like Hoy has decided to throw scissors. Soul stuck with paper whole time. But GLM, yeah, anyone can join the voice chat if they so wish. It's in the YGO from Zero Discord server. So if you want to hop in, you definitely can.
Go ahead.
But yeah. So let's see what's going to happen here. Hoy does know what Soul's on because they were watching the last game. And welcome to the stream, GLAM. Happy to have you in the chat.
Hello.
No? This has been a very interesting locals tonight. So what's been your impression on the format here from these locals you've been watching?
It's definitely super fun. It's just there's so many crazy cards and there's so many like interactions. Like there's layers. The way Jinzo interacts with Call and the way that Imperial Order interacts with stuff that interacts with Jinzo and Call, and it's wild.
Yeah, it honestly, like, in terms of like the chains that can happen, it reminds me of the memes that were going around about like Tierlements format, where people were like, "There's so many chains going on," and they're like, "You're at like chain 10," and it's sort of funny here because you can wind up with like, you may not get to that point, but like you can. I've definitely played games where you've wound up at like chain link 5, and it's just because people are like chaining IO to IO or IO to MST on an IO. Or like Call the Haunted to that to bring back Jinzo, but then there's another MST for the call, and it's just so wild. So,
or a Dust Tornado.
Yeah, Dust Tornado
That's
can also
fun.
see play in there as well.
Where he's like, "I outsmarted you." Well, I outsmarted your outsmarted.
Yeah, and it's just so.
And
cool.
no, I outsmarted you harder and faster.
Yeah, and
shut up.
Well, it's sort of the fun interaction there, and like this format doesn't really see any play because it's not like a quote unquote official format. Like a lot of people build formats around events, or in the case of a lot of DM era formats, based on like ban lists because coverage of the events didn't really exist as much back then.
For the limited list at the time,
but
they were all locals until like 2004.
And the local scene is kind of why we sort of just cover these, because it's like it could have been played at the time, even if it's not legal in a super competitive tournament. There could potentially have been local scenes where people were testing out these cards from PSV, and I think we found something really special with this one. Like, it's just there's so much going on, and I hope that this local sorts of encourage people to try out the format for themselves because it's one that I think not many people know about, and it's just a blast to play.
Ooh. Oh yeah.
Yeah, swords for saying
That was a good idea.
Um,
Confirming
well, swords is kind of
confirming
interesting
searchers.
here. It also does sort of hint at what Soul might be doing here a little bit. Or they could have just drawn the swords for turn, I guess, and just chose to fire it. But probably have a True Nade in hand, I'd assume, if they're doing this.
Most likely.
But
Hoy, I don't know if Soul's listening, but Hoy doesn't play like Heavy Storm, or I didn't see MST in his game.
yeah,
But-
I would I just refrain from mentioning that just in case. But you know, we might find that out in these games, or Hoy could bring in heavy, or you know, whatever sort of spell and trap removals they so choose into these games here. But very interesting matchup. I feel like on paper, like because we saw Hoyd on a bit of an equip strategy, I feel like on paper that deck does struggle against a more stallier burn deck. But there are potential swings that the deck can make if Hoy is patient. That could potentially wind up swinging the game in their favor. We'll have to see
it's
how it
cute,
exactly goes.
honestly.
Hmm?
With what he's playing, it's pretty cute what he's doing.
Okay.
And what the interactions that work here. A certain card you'll get to see that I don't think you saw game 1 of our match.
Interesting.
At least not until the end.
So that'll be cool to
Okay.
see. Change of heart on the new set there. I wonder why. Maybe they're gonna bring out a Can Soldier or a Jinzo here. Tribute over that set.
Mate.
Oh, True Nade coming down. That's pretty good. So that will clear the chain energy and allow for Hoy to go for a somewhat aggressive push here.
Yes.
Potentially a
Those
lethal
swords
push.
will be. I don't think so, but yeah.
Well, that's why I
It'll
said
depend
potentially.
on what he has in hand.
But Raigeki
Oh, yeah.
is going to be pretty good here. Clearing a Sangan and a Wall of Illusion as well. I kind of wonder why they didn't just Raigeki the board before Change of Hearting. Saved a Change of Heart for later. Get in that way.
I
At least this is more
think he
damage value.
wanted to see if there was more damage in that set card.
Yeah. And there might be. We don't. Yep, it is a witch. So that's going to be a
Witch.
bit more damage here. They could have a Cannon Soldier as well, and that would be pretty brutal for Soul to take here this early on. Because Hoy is not normal summoned yet this turn. And with 6 cards in hand, I feel like you probably have Monster Knight. Hayabusa Knight. This might indeed be lethal. Soul's only at 6,500. That's 2,000, 3,100, 4,100, 5,200 so far. If Hoy has basically any equipped card for the Hayabusa Knight, this will be the end of the game.
He doesn't.
And it looks like, looks like he does not. But still a very rough spot for Soul to be in here. Because committing chain energy into this is very, very tricky. You're so low. You only have 2 activations after chain energy goes up. You might not even fire the chain energy here.
You're firing swords more than likely.
Yeah,
you have to.
Swords is definitely something you want to do here because you need to stabilize a bit. But it's very risky situation if Hoy draws a Cannon Soldier. That's just the end of the game. If they manage to tribute over a Sangan or Witch for Jinzo and search out a Cannon Soldier, it's also potentially the end of the game. Like, very tough spot for Soul to be in here.
Painful.
Yeah.
Swords with 3 True Nade just seems so nuts to me.
Oh yeah, it's wild, and something that like True Nade is a card that I think is very underexplored in a lot of retro formats. And it can be really, really good in certain decks. And we see it in these burn decks and these mill decks and stuff. And I feel like because burn and mill are very degenerate, people don't really play them as much or test them as much. But I do think that they can be very, very good in these formats.
When did Big Bang Shot come out? Was that the LOD?
I think that
LON.
Oh, that was LON. Okay.
I think so.
That combos with True Nade too.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, because you equip it to an opponent's monster and then you True Nade, and that actually will banish the opponent's monster because the Big Bang Shot is leaving the field. So
yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah, that's a pretty wild combo. And that actually could potentially. Oh yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, Magician's Force, I think PJ said.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so that's a bit further out of the way then, unfortunately. So yeah, I was gonna say like it could potentially be good in Android format because in Android you have
Magician's
these
Force.
powerful beaters that you want to clear, and potentially doing that could be a good way to do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, looks like our Big Bang Shot dreams are a bit dead in these sorts of formats.
Partially.
But,
We have Fairy
Right.
Meteor Crush, which
that's true.
does the same thing, just worse.
Well, it doesn't do the combo that we were talking about here with the Big Bang Shot to
Combo.
banish.
That, yeah.
Yeah, but still, like Fairy Meteor Crush is something that these equipped decks might be playing too, and that could come back to bite Soul if Hoy's able to do a combo with that.
It definitely shows up later. In like Android Joey Pegasus.
Yeah, yeah, and in Joey Pegasus, I believe there was a high boosted deck that was doing pretty decently because that format, you got double graceful, so that is very good at drawing into your combo a bit. But
Double graceful without it being able to easily interrupt it, other than certain cards.
well, IO, yeah,
hand rips.
I'm
Though
not
that
the-
isn't so bad.
Well, yeah, but
That isn't so bad.
The thing is, like, I'm not the hugest fan of Joey Pegasus format, and the main reason for that is because, like, going first, you have such an advantage over your opponent because you can fire like graceful that can draw you into more gracefuls or draw you into an IO or into hand rips or things like that. And the double graceful is just it may seem like okay, well, both players had access to graceful, so it's a bit balanced. But it really is not balanced in my opinion. Because you set up these like commanding board states on the first turn, and it's just like very frustrating to deal with, and you don't really have the ways to break through that you get later in the game. But
hi, Clody.
Welcome, Clody. Sorry we couldn't hold this later for you. Clody was excited to join, but unfortunately we couldn't quite make the timing work.
From what I saw, Clody also did a tournament match for your Chaos format tourney, so he probably wouldn't have been able to join anyway.
I mean, like, well, I mean, it's quick with my deck anyway, so.
Oh,
like,
that ceasefire is gonna be big. Whoa.
15,
Are they
3,500 damage in one go. Oh, this is the end of the game.
Potentially, yeah, depending on what.
No, this is the end of the game. Both
is
Cretans.
this the semifinal?
Oh
will
yeah,
be
because the
attributed.
Cretans get you back stuff. Yeah, so that will be.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be it. So explosive turn here, indeed.
Comeback turn as well.
Yeah. But
this is one of the big ceasefire moments. This is why one of the reasons we have ceasefire at 1.
Yeah.
So guys, what have we seen till now in this tournament?
We've seen some pretty exciting decks, honestly. We've seen, Quip Aggro, which is what Hoy's playing. We've seen Burn, which is what Soul's playing. And, of course, we've seen some Machine OTK. Although we haven't seen
I played Exodia.
do the best, but, it's still been around.
I see.
I lost 2 close ones to Hoy.
Yeah, unfortunately, Exodia is a bit of an underpowered deck in this format. Too many ways to counter it, but well, I mean,
it just too slow.
It works.
Jinzo the nice gravity bind.
I mean, yeah,
Don't even
Jinzo
play
shuts
it.
off gravity bind, but that's not even the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the hand rips and how explosive this format is with dealing a bunch of burn damage all at once, or not necessarily burn, but a bunch of damage all at once.
With Exodia, you're playing combo, not stall.
Yeah, but combo decks are they suffer a bit more in this format.
Also, I mean, there's too much spell trap removal because, like, I think with 3 Imperial Orders, people should play at least multiple copies of Dust Tornado as well.
Yeah.
Paired with the triple MST, the Heavy Storm, like anything to get rid of this Imperial Order.
Yeah, so Exodia definitely has its issues. Cool to see you experimenting with it, though. But unfortunately, I don't really think it's the best deck in this format. But still cool to see it being experimented with.
Of course not. But I do think it's potentially competitive.
I would
just need to build better.
Not the best deck in the format. I mean that not really competitive. But I encourage you to keep exploring with it. And I'm always happy to be proven wrong about that sort of thing. But it looks like we're going into this game too, and Hoyt's just going to do the classic T-set pass. So,
Very
Yeah,
good.
kind of strange.
well, not necessarily strange.
He No, I mean he got good hands against me, and this time he's just starting slower.
Yeah, well,
Guess he's
also it's
bricking
against.
harder.
Well, the T-set's a classic move. You can't generally understand. Like you can't get a peek
I know it's a
into
classic
their
move.
into their hand after a T-set. But PGR Strength says, "I gotta go. B-Sox, enjoy the rest of the stream. Thank you for stopping by. Always a
Ooh.
pleasure to have you on the comments there."
Ooh.
Ceasefire. Okay, ceasefire of their own.
All
is very
right,
interesting.
but didn't hit any flip effect monster.
Yeah.
Most decks are playing Ceasefire. The
Uh,
side
He's
deck.
not
solo
most
playing the
decks.
many flips, like he's playing the jars, like
He should be.
Magician of Faith.
Well, I mean, in the side deck, sure, but
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Side
okay,
deck.
I thought you were talking about me, but yeah. But
No,
yeah,
I was talking in
it's
general, but yeah.
it's interesting to bring in Ceasefire against this deck though, because like as we've said, like Spear Cretin still works under Ceasefire, so it's a bit weird in that regard.
So
Yes.
it works. Yeah, because they
Ah.
were not activated at the time. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
And
Mirror
the
Force
punish.
to clear away.
The
same thing.
punish.
Yeah, this is very, very good for Soul here. I do think that Hoyt was fine doing this though, because you want to get in for a bunch of damage against the burn deck pretty early on. And
Yes, you
unfortunately,
you
didn't
don't
work
want
out for
them to set up, basically.
Witch coming down here, and
Yep, the one you search, probably.
and hitting in for 11. And that's one of the interesting things about burn decks around this era as well. That a lot of the time they do just hit in with monsters, especially like if you're playing like giant germs and things like that. It can be very good. Sword's coming down here. Soul's gonna think about that for a second, but they are just gonna let that go through. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why they're thinking about it.
Yeah, he can just get rid of it at any point.
Yeah. So
If he
This'll-
has any response, of course.
Yeah, this
feel
will
like
take some
between
time
three
off the
germs-
clock. Oh, what did you
Between
say,
three-
G-Lam? Sorry.
Between 3 Germ and like 3 Ceasefire and Cannon Soldier and Limiter Removal, like you don't even have to be a dedicated burn deck. You can just get there
yeah.
with all
Yeah.
these.
Yeah. And,
Aggro
Like, that's
bomb.
yeah, and that's one of the scary things about this format, that it is very, very explosive.
By the way, an interesting thing, Cannon Soldier is a machine, by the way. So
Yep, and we've seen that
Oh,
come
yeah.
up in the stream already. We've seen Limiter Removal get fired on the Cannon Soldier and be pretty good.
Ah, there it is.
Yep, Malevolent Nuzzler on the high boost night. Unfortunately, not the craziest thing for Hoy here, as they can get him for 1700, but Soul does get a search. If they search out like Cyberjar or something, that can sort of be a 2-for-1. Of course, both players then get more monsters or more spells and traps as well.
Yeah. Also, if I remember properly, Nuzzler won't trigger with the Cyberjar because
It is a when
So
you
it's-
can, so I do believe
Yes.
yeah,
that it
misses
will
timing.
not trigger because it'll miss timing. But yeah, we also know that Soul's playing Morphing Jar number 2 as well, so that will also interact poorly with Nuzzler because Nuzzler will just fall off and the high boost will get shuffled back in. So
yeah, we have so many powerful cards for this period in this format.
okay, it looks like Change of Heart will
Okay.
also be able to help here. Now,
He'll
if
just-
Soul has spell and trap removal for the swords,
Yeah,
it looks like
they
they
He
probably
can't
do.
attack.
Oh,
Uh,
Ion will
I
also do that.
see.
But negates the Nutzler as
Yeah.
well.
But you still get in
Yes.
for 3,400, and then you tribute off the Hayabusa, and
39, 3,000 left.
yeah. So
Yeah, Soul will have the life point advantage, and
Will Hoy pay 500 now?
yeah,
No, I think
that's
it's not
the
worth.
point.
I don't think you
And-
pay here.
No,
Honestly,
no
because
point.
It's
Like,
negated by
no.
IO. So like,
Exactly. So
We now see why
you
Io's power.
yet locking yourself.
yeah.
Oh, also, Soul can now safely activate Chain Energy and just let it sit there until he removes the IO.
Yep. I mean, they could. I mean, it's a bit awkward because like you gotta ask why you're doing that, and the answer would be like
To
if
have it
Hoy
there.
got Jinzo on field, but I mean, Jinzo isn't really close to hitting the field for Hoy because they don't have any sets like Call the Haunter or things like that. You can get a Jinzo to field easily, and all the spells are
Yeah,
negated by IO. So you don't really need to commit the chain energy and let your opponent know that you've got chain energy here. But there are some situations if Hoy did have some back row or things like that, you might want to go for the chain energy. Just to,
he tributed his
have it
cannon
there.
soldier.
But yeah, getting
There'll
in
be
that
2,500 left.
500. And this is very worrying for Hoy because it means that Soul probably has some ways to deal some damage, maybe just desserts, maybe ceasefires and stuff. And yeah, Hoy's in a bit of a tricky spot. I mean, they're going to bring out Witch, and Witch will be able to attack in here for 11.
A reminder, Swords of Revealing Light won't leave the field with IOs activated.
Yep.
It'll just continue to count down from its first from the activation. I'm being stupid, sorry.
No, it dies.
It's activated. I'm saying while it's face up,
No, we get what you're saying. We get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an important point to note. But yeah, so it won't just like pause the counting and then resume the counting when IO drops. It will actually keep a total of that.
Yeah.
So we'll need
But
pay
does
7
it
to
stay
keep
still on the field after 3 turns? No, it goes to grave after 3 turns.
Yeah. So it's gonna stay up here.
Knock can't be used.
Oh,
Nothing.
They're sending it to grave anyways.
Early?
Well,
Unfortunately, we don't have
that. They can't choose to do that.
Yeah,
No.
I mean,
Yeah, Swords does
okay,
stay.
yeah, so
So I'll yeah.
Not because of IO, because the
because
I
of IO.
apologize. Yeah.
It stays because of IO. That's why it stays. That's what we were saying.
It would still be destroyed. It'd still leave the field after that. Dang, I'm being stupid. After the end phase of the opponent's third turn, it'd still leave because that's just how it is. That's how it works.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my brain is just
it's late
turning
at night,
off.
so no worries. But it does.
Swords will leave the field.
It does remember because it's like it's not something. It's not like the card is putting counters on itself as an effect. It's just when a certain number of turns pass, and I doesn't negate the turns passing. It just prevents the card from being sent at the end of that, and that will leave after that. Pretty sure that's how that ruling works. There's a ruling that doesn't often come up because by the time IO is out, Swords is a lot less popular. But
it still appears, but only in certain decks. It stops being a good stuff card.
Yeah, I mean that's what I meant by less popular. So, but it looks like Soul's potentially setting up a kill shot here. Hoy's at 2,500. If Soul has double ceasefire, that's potentially the end of the game. Oh well, Jinzo
there
will
it
also
is.
be pretty good.
I think Swords is back online as well.
Yep. Snatch Steal though, that's gonna be pretty good for the Witch. Yeah. So
wait,
doesn't the Sword stay? I think the Swords leaves at the end phase.
So Swords will stay forever for the rest of the game now.
I don't think that's true. But
no, I mean like
this is a very weird ruling. We have a rulings channel on our Discord. If someone wants to ask there.
Yeah, we talked about this months ago.
Yeah, so if someone wants to look it up and see how it actually works. But I do believe that the sword stays until the end. Well, actually, it might. I think it probably goes here. Actually, yeah,
yes.
I think that makes sense.
It depends on how they thought what was going on.
Well, here I think it goes because it's reached its turn counter and IO's preventing it from, or IO's now prevented from preventing it from leaving the field. So I think that is how it works. But this should probably be the end of the game, unless there's something here like an MST on the snatch will potentially be good. But
yes, though. I'm talking to Soul, and he doesn't realize that Swords does remember the turns when IO is up.
Yeah, Swords remembers the turns. So, yeah. So the
unfortunately
Swords does go. So, yeah. I mean, the fact that Hoy is not admitted defeat here means that they probably have like an MST or something to stop the snatch. Or it could just mean that they're trying to bluff something here. But it does remember the turns. So yeah, Hoy's saying thumbs up. You're good to go.
Yeah.
So let's keep this locals moving. Let's go.
We're talking still,
Well, can you?
and
I mean,
I'm
can you tell Soul
trying.
how it works, and then
I am.
okay.
I just don't remember if this was the third turn
It
after
was
activation or not.
no, it was
Yeah,
because we
it
saw
was,
that
it
get
was.
counted. So
Yeah.
So
Then
yeah,
yes, it should still be up.
no, it shouldn't be up because the
No,
third
this
turn
was-
already passed, is what
It's-
they said.
This is the fourth turn.
This is the
Yeah,
third
I'm
turn.
trying to. If this is the third turn, then it's still up
Okay, you
because
can
it
check the
goes
log.
at the end of that
Well,
turn.
yeah, you can check
It's-
the log then, or they can check
Yeah.
the log
Yeah.
to see. But yeah, if
Yeah,
it
we
won't
can
just
see
go
yours.
away if I so if this is the third turn Swords has been active for, then that will indeed continue to active.
Stay up.
Yeah. I thought that the third turn passed the previous turn though.
Yeah.
It will stay on. So this is the third turn then, right? Okay, good.
Yes. So swords
Okay, good. So
will
yeah, will
stay.
indeed go away at the end of this turn. Yeah. So yeah, I thought the third turn had already
that's-
passed. But it
Hoy
looks like
sent it. That's why I was confused.
I actually can check the stream going backwards.
What are
maybe.
they? Okay, they've got MST then. Yeah, they've got MST.
He has MST, so it doesn't matter.
Oh,
Yep.
it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess if you want to use it for a different thing, Hoy's thinking there and gonna let that go through. So
Yeah.
they gotta have something here. Maybe Karibo, maybe MST of their own. But Witch attacking in, and it looks like they are gonna take that.
Yeah. Only Kuribo.
Okay, yeah,
That's
looks like
game.
that's the end of the game. They just had Ceasefire, and they did.
Oh,
have the Fairy Meteor
there's
Crush
Fairy Meteor
indeed.
Crush.
But yeah, the IO lock there plus the Jinzo, like, yeah, pretty rough for the end there. But it looks like we do have our finalist here, as Soul will move on to the finals to face Aratus, and we'll have to see how that game goes. But yeah, cool to see Burn making it this far. So yeah, let's see how that.
Yeah, yes. Karibo cost me game 2 while I'm sitting here with you right now.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, they didn't draw Karibo there, or they might not have sided in because Karibo,
he
is a bit of
sent
an
it.
awkward card against Burn, but it might be. I don't know. I generally am not the biggest fan of Karibo in a lot of these formats because it just it does protect you a bit, but it's also not the best trade. It's very easily searchable, I guess, off of Witch and Sangan, but I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. If,
It works if you're going through, if your OTK strategy is like a towers one. You're using one monster to boost up, and then you just pitch to Karibo and save yourself that turn.
Yeah.
I mean,
it also works to save you if you're going to lose, and you can counter and then win the game that way.
Limiter removal though.
Yeah, that's true.
Because limiter removal must be activated first.
Yeah, and then they send the Karibo, so that basically destroys your opponent's monsters and can be pretty good that way. And I think that if this format sees more experimentation, I think that more Karibos might see play in the main deck even. But we'll have to see what happens in this final game here. Looks like Soul will win the rock paper scissors, and they're going to be able to go first. So if they set up a chain energy board, that can be pretty rough for Aratus here. Pot agreed is always a good start.
I like the format.
Well,
huh? I think you cut off there for the beginning of that, G-Lam. What did you say?
What did you say, G-Lam?
I like Karibo in the chaos format to stop BLS, and it's a dark for your own BLS.
Yeah, no, that's a good
point.
And I think that as people experiment with chaos more, it could be an option, because one thing that I've noticed is chaos format, very, very fast format, very aggressive format. And just being able to stop 3k damage coming at you can be very, very good. So yeah, maybe even in some chaos turbo decks as another thing to do. Also stops Kaiku as well, and Kaiku is very annoying to deal with if it's banishing cards that you really want.
Breaking.
For which?
Let's see what discards.
Okay, duo coming down here as well.
Okay, well, good. I mean,
Now,
I
are they
think
going
he's a
to
good
roll
discard
dice?
for Sol.
They shouldn't roll dice.
Is
I
he
mean,
going?
The pick already happened, so you don't roll dice after that. But
I
hitting a
wasn't
ceasefire
there.
and a solemn. So solemn is interesting in Soul's deck as they are playing chain energy, so it can keep the chain energy up, but also double-edged sword in that case. But
Yeah, don't like it that much.
well,
I think he's
he
just
has it.
planning to set up the double cretin duo and, camp with that without
Oh, you're right.
wasting too much, cards.
Aratus is on
well,
Momanga.
Momongas are going
He's
to be
already
pretty good
pre-
against their deck.
Oh, yes.
He pre-sided.
Well,
It's
I'm not
funny.
sure if it's pre-siding or if it's just because Momongas are pretty decent
Yes,
as extenders.
yes, squirrels are a good card.
Yeah.
Killer squirrels are great. I'm just making a joke, a clear joke.
Well, it looks like Aratus is going to set another, pass back to Soul. So very slow game to start with, but Aratus has to be feeling pretty decent about this.
Yep.
Yeah, he's good. He's got this set up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Looks like
Jinzo coming down.
Yep, Jinzo.
There's the Jinzo.
So maybe like a Raigeki is in Aratus' future here, or maybe Soul's just trying to get a bit aggressive with their.
Or he's just deck thinning.
Yep, that too.
Or he's just deck thinning.
And looks like that'll hit the Momanga there. Aratus will gain 1,000. And then Sangan will be able to search out something potentially pretty good here.
Maybe Sol has the Andrip. Like he's got 4 cards in the hand, like must be power spells.
Yeah.
So
but if it's like Raigeki, you probably would fire the Raigeki beforehand. Because you want to prevent Aratus from gaining the 1,000 from a manga. You also want to actually get in for a ton of damage as well. So
I was thinking
tomato.
maybe a Conky duo. Don't know. Tomato.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. No, that's one.
The tomato train is coming.
Well, I mean, it's debatable whether Aratus actually wants to crash in their tomato into Soul's tomato. But if they set tomato, then what Soul can do is just attack him with Jinzo and then crash their tomatoes into the Aratus tomatoes and do it that way. So Aratus has to think about like what exactly they want to do here. It's a little bit awkward for them because Jinzo is such a powerful card once it hits the field.
Yeah.
Looks like pre-mat.
There's a reason it was limited.
So
okay, another Jinzo from the other side.
Yep. Or
no Jinzo.
Oh, change of heart. I see here. They go for Cannon Soldier. I get it.
Aratus, by any chance, has limiter removal.
It could also be limiter removal coming down, but either way, this tomato train probably is ending in a Cannon Soldier on Aratus' part here.
If he had double limiter, we wouldn't even be seeing this. He just attacked into the Mystic Tomato.
Yeah.
And that'd be the end of the game.
But it looks like they don't have double limiter, but even one limiter is going to be pretty brutal here. GMYFS says, who's in the booth? What's up, duelists? In the booth with me right now, we got Blah, Clody, and G-Lam here in the voice chat on Discord. But this is a pretty exciting locals in PSV format, which is a very interesting format. And as we've seen in the stream, surprisingly interactive for early DM era. Like you have lots of chain links going on here. Triple IO, triple Call of the Haunted, triple Jinzo. A lot of interesting, crazy stuff going on in this format that you don't see anywhere else in DM. So very, very cool stuff.
A lot of chainables, though not in the way you'd think.
Yep, and that's part of the fun of it. And so we've seen some exciting plays so far tonight. And this play right now is also really, really interesting. So Soul does search first because they are not the turn player. But they have to know that Aratus is getting out a Cannon Soldier here, because that's the reason why you do this play, is to tribute off the Sangan and Jinzo and get in for damage that way.
Not going for Giant Germ.
And there is the Cannon Soldier. Yeah, Sangan is interesting here because Germ would potentially help the wall up, deal a little bit more damage, but they might not be playing Germ as well. I like Germ personally in this style.
We didn't see it.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet, so looks like Sangan will get a search there. And they've gone through one Sangan, one Witch, so Could be a flip monster potentially, like Cyberjar or something, to get them back into the game that way. Could
Yeah.
also just
Only Cyberjar, I think.
yeah. Cyberjar
If
is
they out.
awkward here though, because then Aratus is tributing off for
Oh,
cannon anyways.
Oh,
against the
there's
Ang
his
Mamanga.
Mamanga.
So yep, that's
Mamanga,
gonna be
yeah.
pretty good. Recover a bit of the damage that you're gonna be losing here. And yeah, main 2, that Canceller is gonna tribute away that Jinzo.
Maybe anche also the Sangan.
Yeah,
Bye,
probably the
Jinzo.
Sangan as well.
Rough
Yeah.
research. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like
it
they're keeping the
doesn't.
Sangan up. Just I guess
Alright.
it makes sense if Soul does clear it. Like you get the search either way. So
Yeah, some pressure on also on
yeah.
the field.
So especially if you don't have another way to get through the Mamangas as well, it can be good. It's also to think here. It's a bit of a tricky situation. There is the option to summon out Mamanga, crash into Sangan, and get 2 Mamangas on your side of the field. I don't think that's a good option, but it is an option they could do. Look, they're just going to set 1, set 2, and pass back to Aratus here.
He does need the recovery.
Yeah.
He basically.
GMYFS
No,
says,
it's
OCG Tomato is life. I just had my 3 from Japan come in this week. That is awesome.
Oh,
I've heard it
yeah.
looks really good in paper.
For what card set?
Let's get a.
Is it an original?
Let's get a poll of the commentators here. Which do people prefer, the TCG art of Tomato or the OCG art? Because I'm a TCG art prefer here.
I'm TCG all the way.
I'm also a TCG art guy, but it's
you guys suck. oh, mere horse.
It's just the teeth. The teeth are so threatening and demonic. They add such. Yeah, it's just so cool. Like, I don't know, the original Tomato. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. It looks like a jack-o'-lantern, but I don't know.
The TCG Tomato looks like a living tomato with a human face.
Yeah,
the OCG Tomato looks like someone stuffed a spirit inside of it.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, I can see the mysticness of the Mystic Tomato in OCG. Like, while the TCG Tomato is a Mystic Tomato, you can tell by seeing the face.
Yeah, look at it. And also the background of the TCG versus the background of the OCG. Yeah. I mean, one is much more psychedelic.
Yeah, exactly. So, all these waves, like very mystic.
Yeah. It looks like GMYFS says the background is whack AF. And they also say that the jack-o'-lantern is a draw for them for the OCG one. They also mentioned the original stat boxes. That is true. That also is very aesthetic as well.
I do like the stat boxes.
Yeah. So that's another thing for the Tomatoes in their favor. But I don't know. It's just because I grew up with the TCG art, but I love it.
I think he's talking about the Series 2 card design, not the modern one.
Yes, that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
But Seaspirit says OCG Tomato is a pumpkin painted red, and I agree. Like, this is more of a pumpkin than a tomato.
Yeah.
Another reason to like the TCG art a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, different strokes for different folks, though. People are gonna like what they want to like. Ulti Gemini Elf coming next. That's very exciting. OCG Gemini Elf or TCG Gemini Elf. Because those also have different arts as well.
But I mean,
slightly different arts.
About who's better, and of course it's OCG all the way in that case for Gemini Elf.
Yeah, I like the TCG Gemini
It's not
Elf.
censored. It's not censored.
I mean, sometimes I don't mind censoring. Like, if you look at Harpy Lady, I'm like, does it really need to be like this for the OCG? Like, I'm fine with the TCG lady, Harpy Lady. Like, I'm no prude, but like, even I'm like, this just feels like gratuitous, for the.
That's a little bit of the point. It's supposed to be gratuitous. Cyber Shield is dominatrix armor, for example.
I think it's funny how you can clearly tell the portion of her clothes that they added.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wish they made it one solid color. I think it would have looked better censored, but it looks silly.
I mean, that's part of the charm for me. The clumsy attempts at censoring. It's just funny. It's like shows how much they put into the earlier forms of the game. But yeah, so Soul will gain back 2,000 from the mangas as well. So both players have gone through 3 Mamanga boosts. But Soul's still a little bit behind on life points.
Yeah, I haven't seen many noblemen of crossouts around yet.
Yeah, we saw some
Very
earlier,
strange.
but
I
Nobleman,
see. Yeah, because
it's
it is a 3,
yeah,
and
it's
also like
Yes.
face down, putting face down monsters like is very meta.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
you'd think it would
Nobleman is
be-
really good against the empty jar deck and other flip oriented decks.
Yeah.
That's why it sees plays in the official formats. But here, it's just that it's strongest for a while because it's at its strongest in number, though we haven't seen people really play the mill strategy.
Yeah, and I mean, this is again something where like PSV format very underexplored. So who knows with more testing if people will play more noblemen than the main or whether it will just be relegated to the side deck. But that's part of the fun of like showing off these formats. You know,
We have Shallow Grave with the OCG ruling now, so Empty Jar should get a second look.
I mean, it's the issue with Empty Jar and the Shallow Grave thing is that like the problem with Empty Jar isn't that like they've got a monster in graveyard like turn 1 and they can't get it back.
Oh,
like
what's this?
The problem is the deck's
2K?
too slow. Yep, 2,000 there, but that Raigeki will go through. Now,
Oh no,
It's
it's
not that
1,500.
slow.
oh yeah,
A
no wait, wouldn't
1,500?
that be two?
Indeed.
That would be
No, Mechanical Chaser
oh, yeah,
doesn't count.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yep. 1,500. Yep, and then the 500 from the Raigeki. So that tells me that Aratus likely doesn't have like an MST, or else you'd fire the MST on the chain energy first, right? But Cyberjar here is going to be pretty good for Soul, if that's able to go through. But Rangers had to know about the Sangate because they saw the hand off the Comfy earlier. So I'm curious why
Yes.
they went for this. Some comments I want to mention. GMYFS mentions that the Rush Duel art is kind of whack. And yeah, Rush Duel is kind of interesting in terms of the art, just changing up things a little bit. That would be a potential cool video to do, just showing off the differences between Rush Duel art and OG art. But the Entertainer also says TCG Tomato is best. So we got another TCG believer there for the Tomato. And GMYFS says, okay, here's a fun question for the booth. What's your favorite recruiter minus Tomato? And what's your favorite thing to search with it in any format that you've played? Ooh, that is a good question. Oh, Desktop.
Are we talking just the 6 recruiters from like Magic Roller or like any recruiter?
I mean, this does say
Nova
any
Summoner.
recruiter. So
Nova Summoner, UFO Roid, things like that are also included. If you,
yeah,
you
UFO
consider
Roy
that
doesn't-
question.
oh,
Oh,
that's
ML.
searchable,
Okay,
yeah,
MLR
that's searchable.
recruiters of them is
Emerald.
specified.
No, my favorite. I don't know.
It's
Shining Angel.
For me, like, do you count like Oracle, Great Keeper's Oracle as a recruiter? Because it recruits.
No, he just wants MRL.
Oh, okay. It looks like they clarified in the comments. So MRL recruiters.
Yes, as
I would probably say Giant Rat. Because like it does see play in like Rat Box decks, and especially
like,
in like later formats, it gets a lot more fun.
The 1450 defense. I like that about Ret.
Yeah, walls up other recruiters as well, which is another cool application of it. So yeah. Oh, GMYFS says Clody probably likes Grizzly for Catapult Turtle. Clody, what's your thoughts
actually,
on
I
that?
hate Grizzly. It's probably the one like when I was thinking about the question, I say like surely Grizzly is in the bottom of this list.
Well, Grizzly is at
like
least better
Grizzly.
than UFO Turtle. So
Well, yeah.
what do you mean? UFO Turtle searches Mask Dragon.
Oh, how
But
could I
you need
forget?
a
And Fire
manager to
Princess.
search you for turtle. But anyway, I think it's tomato still. Like I
He
can
said
say
other than tomato.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
other than tomato. All right, you know what? I'm gonna be alternative. I'm gonna go for Flying Kamakiri.
Ooh, okay.
I gotta go.
You know
What's
why?
your
Because,
favorite
like,
target?
My favorite target is not in MRL format though.
No,
It's,
this is
You can
like,
say
any
anything you
format,
like.
so-
All right.
What's your favorite
well,
target?
Twin-headed Behemoth.
Mm,
Huh?
Like I was trying a dragon deck in LOD format with the dump truck,
Yeah.
and like I was trying dragons like with flying Kamakiri and triple twin-headed Behemoth. Like I thought it was a cool concept. Like
Yeah. G-Lam, how about you? What's your favorite target off of Kamakiri?
Oh, I gotta go Arm
No, what's
Dragon
his
level
favorite
3.
one?
Oh yeah,
No,
that's a
my-
good one as well.
What's your personal favorite recruiter?
Minus tomato, you mean?
No, minus tomato for G-Lam. You said Kamakiri. Does he like Kamakiri too? Or
Yeah.
does he have another option?
Carry
Yeah.
into level 3. I played Arm Dragon.
Actually, that's a
Oh my
fact.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I like Shining Angel,
I mean,
personally.
since
Not
Kamakiri
for-
was brought up, I do have to mention, I did back when Reaper format was still a thing that people played. I did bring a like a wind toolbox deck, like using Kamakiri to search out like Nephthys or Hand of Nephthys, that is, like Ultimate Insect level 3, things like that. Because for wind, you had, this was inspired by another duelist, Skyson, who brought a wind deck to a top 8 finish of one of those tournaments. Because you had a Spiritual Wind Art Miyabi, and that's a very powerful trap that lets you tribute a wind monster to spin a monster back to deck. And the wind deck actually had a lot of last will triggers. So I just basically used it as a last will toolbox with Kamakiri and stuff. So actually, thinking back, Kamakiri probably is my favorite as well.
Yo.
Oh my god. The suffering in the Discord. Delicious.
But
The suffering in the Discord. What?
GMYFS brings up some interesting notes as well. UFO Turtle was cool with Cyber Phoenix, and that's very true. Like Cyber Phoenix is, like, I'm really excited to reach like sort of the middle of GX, the mid GX era formats, because I feel like a lot of people don't really feature those as much, and there's some really cool things that happen. And Cyber Phoenix is one of my favorite cards from those formats, so I'm excited for that. Time. Also,
we have a lot of
Sasuke-
silly things we can do with that.
Sasuke Samurai number 4 being brought up for a Kamakiri target as well. Sasuke Samurai number 4 is like the most terrifying card in existence. Because it's just so funny. It's like your opponent summons it out. Like, what are you supposed to do? Attack into it? Lose all your monsters? Like, you know,
50% of the time.
it's the silliest.
Carpath has a video having
card.
it today.
Oh, nice. I need to check that out then.
Yeah. Yes.
Ooh,
Coin
Cyber
flip
Jar
deck.
going on.
Okay, looks like they're attacking
see.
into the Cyberdoor here, just trying to get more damage in. This is a bit risky because they do go up to a lot of cards in hand, and that
Ooh,
Morphing
but
Dart number 2 and the Spear Cretin are going to be quite
eh.
unfortunate. This could just turn into a mill
Yes.
game here.
A reminder to everyone that this will not trigger chain energy.
It will not.
There will
yes,
be no
because-
damage. This is not from hand.
Yes, that is true. So Aratus is in kind of an awkward spot. I mean, if they hit into the Cretin here, they can get more monsters on field, but you don't necessarily want that in the face of Morphing Dart number 2. Raigeki's already been used up. The Dark Hole can be used to pop those set monsters there, but still a little bit awkward. But you do have ways to remove the chain energy now, so at least Aratus can do that and not spend life points. But I think at this point in the game, Soul's win condition here is to go for deck out.
Yes.
But does he have the tools? That's the question.
The issue now is Soul has equal amount of monsters to Aratus. If Morphing Jar number 2 is attacked, the Spear Cretin will be forced back into the deck, and they'll both mill.
Yeah, that's true.
And Soul will have to hope that
looks like they are indeed
Aratus mills
attacking in
more.
there. And it is the Morphing Jar number 2, so that
there
will
it
get
is.
shuffled back in. And
the Morphing Jar number 2 will not.
Oh, well, it looks like Aratus hit the Mechanical Chaser there. What will Soul hit? Oh, it looks like both of them just. I mean,
does the shuffle work in this?
Classic DB shuffler moment.
Yes, though the difference now is he's gotten the Mechanical Chaser set. No more pressure for the time being.
Yes, although Dark Hole is probably going to come here. Oh, the witch effect should have triggered, yeah. So, but that would have
Yes.
triggered before this crashing happened. But there probably is a target. Jinzo is a target that probably Aratus is playing. So they probably would have searched out Jinzo.
Indeed.
I don't think it would have changed the math much on the Morphing Armor 2 play, but this is an important thing, which is mandatory. So yeah,
It's
kinda
late
awkward
though.
here.
That yeah.
Well,
You can't
the
rewind
games
because of the
state,
morphing jar number 2, right?
but I
Yes,
mean, they
we've
made their
reached the
own
point that
card anyway. They were like the game state is basically the exactly same
Yeah.
what is happening. So like, yeah, I mean, in the end, thinking about it, like,
Yeah.
it's not irreversible game state,
Oops.
Thanks to the lucky meals, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, some other comments from the chat. We got C-Spare saying Troop Dragon. Also, Sasuke Samurai number 2 has a crazy effect though. I was shocked
Yeah.
finding out they printed Mini Cold Wave on a monster. Yeah, it's
And-
interesting. Sasuke number 2
Yeah.
just feels such like an awkward card. That's another Last Will trigger though. And it's like Cold Wave plus a Last Will trigger, so maybe Stein decks should take note of that when Stein decks, are around. GMYFS says Fax DCR card, and yeah, it's always cool. It's cool just going through and seeing Sasuke Samurais come out. Right, we got Sasuke Samurai number 3 in Invasion of Chaos, and that's a very funny card. Can be used for some
very good
silly
card
decks.
if used properly.
Well,
Yes.
Like I said
very silly
a couple
card.
weeks ago, it was like
Oh, the thing
flabbergasted.
works.
With what?
Like
The thing works with creature swap.
Wait, Julian, what were you saying?
Oh, sorry.
I played against it at Edison a couple
Ooh.
weeks ago, and like it was creature swap shenanigans, and I was on Flamvel, and I don't know what to do against it. It was crazy. He's
Yeah.
drawing like
Yeah.
9 cards a turn.
That is
Yeah.
kind of wild, especially because I feel like Flammable
Yeah.
doesn't have many outs to that sort of thing.
No,
Yeah.
Like Samurai Turbo is pretty good when it goes off.
When it goes
Like,
off is the
you're
key,
giving-
but yeah,
Yes, it can go off.
it's cool to see it
somewhat
still
regularly.
see play later on. Forceful Sentry coming down here, sending a card back to deck. I'm curious what Aratus will pick. It's very interesting.
Oh, interesting. They are because they are in deck out zone, like putting a
Well,
card back to deck.
I think for Aratos it actually isn't that bad because Soul's only at 2750. So Aratos has sort of got the upper hand here.
Oh,
Well, the IO will come down. It looks like
and
no MST for that.
he
though.
doesn't have MST in hand or set or Dust Tornado set apparently.
Yeah, that is
But-
kind of unfortunate unless they're just willing to let the IO go up there. But it's
I honestly would let the sentry because
Okay.
you gain one more card in the and like I don't think he has an out to
Yeah.
fear create in any way.
and pitching painful choice here, the right play in my opinion, because you likely don't have a set
Against
of
this
fives that wins you
deck.
the game. No, just
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this
Yeah.
situation in general. You've got 9
Yeah.
cards left in deck. I doubt there are 5 that you can actually profitably send off painful choice, and then you're putting yourself into
Without
deck out
losing,
mode. Yeah,
Potentially.
so,
Yes.
So very interesting. GMIFS says Graceful Dice is a good card if played properly. Very true. very, very true.
If you have a good pair of dice.
Except
But
Graceful Dice doesn't have its own strategy.
well, I think that's more of a facetious comment. But
I know.
Yeah, let's see what Soul is going to let the IO draw. It might mean that I think they do have another. I think we saw.
Yeah, it's
They
low in life points as you
got
pointed out
another.
early on.
Yeah, and you can't pay at 2750. I think. So. Yeah, they're
Aratus
thinking.
could have a dark hole still in.
Yeah, I'm kind of
in the deck.
surprised that Aratus didn't just preemptively dark hold the Spear Queen because Soul then.
Oh.
Okay, True Nade coming down. IO is fired on Aratus' part here.
MST?
Could be potentially. Soul has not used up any MSTs yet, and I think we did see them maybe get an MST in hand. Looks like they're not going to go for it though.
It's crazy that we are seeing the Imperial Orders only at the first ones only at this point in the game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, I think it feels like much later in the game than it is because there have been like 2 or 3 Cyberjar activations, which is like cut
Yeah,
down the decks by like
good
10 or
point.
something. Um,
The game's also been pretty slow. We're still on game 1.
yeah. GeoMyFest says damage step, and that's true. Graceful Charity can be used in damage step, so can't respond to it with IO. There you go.
I think he's talking about Graceful Dice.
Yes, that's what I was. Oh, I said Graceful Charity. I think instead of Graceful.
Yeah.
That would be crazy if Graceful Charity could be activated in damage step. It's like.
Oh, right. Also, no, it doesn't work that way right now anyway. If it were online, if it were present.
Yeah, looks like Swords is going up because they probably want to force Aratus to keep up the IO. Which I think they're fine keeping up the IO.
As strong as it is, can also help the burn player because of its cost.
It does do 700 damage each turn. But I feel like that's honestly not the biggest deal for Aratus here.
No.
Looks like they're going to let the IO go, though. And Fire Dark Hole.
Yeah, he wants to go for game, I guess.
Maybe. Looks like IO's going to...
He has a second eye.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now we'll shut that off. I mean, let's check Grave. Yeah, there is a Jinzo in Grave. So if Soul has like a Call of the Haunted to bring back the Jinzo, that could be... Well, actually, that would shut off the IO. So it wouldn't really... That would be bad.
It'd be redundant.
That'd be bad to do, yeah.
But he still got the swords going, so...
Yeah. Let's see what actually happens here because Aratus probably, if they're going for this, they probably have a way to finish the game here. Maybe they're just doing it to be safe. They don't want to set up the Spear Cretin loop on Soul's part. I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm glad that we got to see another, sort of IO chain there. Favorite part about the format, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
Here comes the Jinzo.
Yep, probably going for Jinzo.
Probably.
Maybe they're targeting Soul's Jinzo here. That
okay,
that they definitely have an MST because, or they've got to call the Haunted instead of their own. And what they do here is they chain their own Call of the Haunted to Soul's Call of the Haunted to bring back their own Jinzo to shut off Soul's.
Chain Link 2
in there.
Chain Link 2.
Chain now or never, never.
Okay,
okay,
that's why that was getting fired there.
Does he have?
He's got
Does he have an MST or no?
Yeah?
Morphing coming down as well. Why is
swords?
Oh, MST. Okay,
never mind. He said there's the MST.
That was a very clever play on Aratus' part. I gotta say, that was very big brained. Not MSTing the call on the Jinzo, so that way you could save the MST for the swords here. That was incredibly big brained. So,
he had it. He just had the cards in hand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everything. So.
I mean, when you draw 10 cards off Cyberjar, you're more likely to have the cards in hand. To be fair.
I mean, actually, probably Sol even knew because they milled quite. Yeah. Sol knew that he had those.
Yeah.
Because he drew by Cyberjar both.
But that's part of the fun, I think, too. And like. I don't know. There's just so many unique interactions in this format. Like, it's just so cool. Like, I honestly like this format better than Imperial format. Because Imperial format feels like watered down Android, but this format feels like its own sort of thing. But yeah, very, very good stuff.
And this is the part of the
explosive back, strange strategies.
Yeah, very explosive stuff. I want to mention some comments here. C-Spare says not yet, which I think was referring to Graceful Dice, maybe. Or maybe not.
Yeah, and damage check.
Yeah.
For some reason, you couldn't do it until later. I don't remember the exact date.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yes, it's on the ruling timeline.
Says, let's replace reinforcements in Yugi Kaiba with Graceful Dice. # custom format. That would be very funny.
That's IOC format. April 4, 2004. They can now be activated in
the Graceful Dice ruling. Okay.
Previously, the bleep old rulings PDF said that you could activate them in the battle phase before the damage step.
But not during the damage step?
Nope.
That's interesting. I guess because
it's
the die roll, but that's weird to me though.
Yeah, it
But
makes Rush recklessly much better than them.
well, Rush
until
Reckless is
that
already
point.
much better than Graceful Cherry or Graceful Dice
I
because
not
it's you
yes,
can only gain 600 off Graceful
consistent.
Dice, but you can
Yeah,
gain 700 off Rush Reckless.
I know. I know.
GMYFS says
I'm
this
just saying much better.
yeah.
Not as like you don't even think about playing Graceful Dice in this.
Well, you
Well,
don't
at least
think
with
about
this,
it. I think even with the ruling, if it was how it should be, I
or
think you
silly
wouldn't
dice
complain about it.
shenanigans, or silly
But
dice shenanigans.
GMYFS says this is why Aratus is one of the greats. And yeah, I mean, Aratus is a very, very good duelist in a lot of these DM era formats. And I think we're seeing here, like, because Burn is a very, like, skill-intensive deck to play against. We've seen Aratus pull off some really interesting plays against it. And I think that, like, you know, it's cool to see two great players, like, just fighting it out because you wind up with these really interesting plays like this. That's why I like holding the locals every week. It's really cool to see. Yeah. But
It
opening
was an
Mahanga,
honor
great
to
start.
duel him in one of the local finals.
Who did?
I did in one of the local finals for Yada format, the first
Oh yes,
one.
I remember that. Yeah. So big accomplishment there. Soul is going to set one and pass back to Aratos there. Saiyan coming down.
Okay.
And Saiyan's hitting
Oh.
over a manga that, you know, Aratos doesn't know about.
Key.
So you can just crash in there. So we'll get another 1,000 though. So, you know, more for Aratos to cut down.
Yeah, and he's
not hitting the set.
just giving him the 2,000 life points.
Yeah. And you gotta eat through them eventually unless you wait for like a Raigeki or Darkhold. But
yeah, not worth waiting anyway.
yeah,
So
you just want to get aggressive against a deck like this.
yeah, keep the
If you're
board
playing
setting
multiple
going.
knocks, you might afford to wait a turn or two, but
Well,
otherwise, yeah.
Even then, like if you think about it, like
it's a waste.
yeah, if you think about it on an abstract level, right? Like if you just wait, right, your opponent can just set more monsters, and then you've got more to eat through. So like if you're waiting for the knocks, it's like, well, you might as well save them for your opponent's later stuff that they're setting after you clear their monsters, to then get in for more damage that way, right?
Oh, there it is.
Chain Energy's coming down. That'll make the game a bit tougher for Aratos here if they don't have a way to clear it. But, you know, after siding, you likely have more ways to clear it in the deck. We'll have to see what happens here.
Yeah.
The best knock targets here, like, are all the recruiters. The first Momonga, only the first one.
Honestly, Cretan is also a really good knock target.
Creating, yeah, any flip effect, of course, because also get rid of all the copies of it.
Yep. Sangan is hitting the grave there. And Soul might even want to get like a Spear Cretan here because Aratos has no graveyard right now. So Spear Cretan's kind of just beneficial for Soul here. So you'll have to see what they pick here. But it all depends also on their other set because their other set's already like a Spear Cretan or something. Then you might not need to search it out.
Yes, he could just fetch back probably the Sangan. You don't need to fetch Momonga again unless you want to.
I think honestly fetching Momonga is pretty good because you gain 1,000. And with Chain Energy up, you kind of want that to be the case. Looks like Sangan's going to hit into a witch. That'll wall that up a bit. Cost Aratos 200 damage there. And let's see if they actually commit more to field with the Chain Energy up. Looks like
they might not.
Yeah, Chain Energy, very interesting card. It's always a couple different options.
Did Chain Energy see play back in the day, or is that a retrospective?
I think it's
change?
more. It's interesting. Like,
what was the question?
People did play them, but I think it wasn't quite as fine tuned as a lot of the modern decks are.
What deck? I
didn't
asked
hear
if
the Chain Energy decks were like played back in the day. Or
if it's more of a modern I remember reading about some of them, but it just wasn't a popular deck because, well, it's a burn deck.
Well, it's burn, but also I feel like it probably was much less optimized compared to how they are now. And I'm not even saying that the decks are fully optimized in the modern setting, because I think there's still a lot of experimentation that can be done with them. But I think people really
nobody liked
figured out the power of the deck, like now.
Ooh.
And Asin McGee mentioned that Chain Energy was a playground staple here. And it was indeed. Like, you know, we all had that friend that would play the most degenerate things around.
Yeah.
including like just chain energy decks. And so yeah, but
At the local level, though, based on what I've read, I didn't see that many chain energy burn decks.
yeah, so it's more of a
So
modern innovation. And Chain Energy actually
yes,
did win a treasure tournament as well, the first treasure tournament that we held. So whether that was just because it was the first tournament and the format hadn't been explored that much, or because the deck is actually extremely good, that will take even more testing. But I do think that Chain Energy decks are like tier 1 for a fair amount of time. And there's Dark Hole.
a clear shot to deal some damage.
Yep. Unfortunately, Aratus also gets to search here. Also, the Cretans are a lot less good at this point now if you do commit a Cretan, but getting in the damage for a burn deck is still very good. And we also do know that Soul does have the chain energy in hand as well, because Aratus chose to get rid of the Call the Haunted there. So,
which backfired a lot a bit.
oh yeah. I don't think it was necessarily a bad play to do, but I think I probably would have gone for the chain energy with the Dust Tornado.
I agree.
I
That
would have
thing
gone
must
for
go.
the safety too, yeah.
No,
But I mean, it's easy to talk with that we are just watching, because when you are in game, you are tunnel vision sometimes, so
Well,
you don't see many
also, we don't know
the
what's in
op-
Aratus' hand too. Like Aratus
Yeah,
could have plenty of
exactly.
spell and trap
Yeah.
removal, and they just wanted to clear the unknown and then go for the removal on the chain energy here, right?
They'll take 500 to do it, though.
Yep, they will.
There's the MST.
So,
Yeah,
and that can add
Yes,
up over time.
that's why.
But
Though, if he did that, Soul could have flipped the Call the Haunted and summoned Sangan anyway,
Well,
and then
something-
just set the call again.
something also to consider with the Dust Tornado play is that we saw Soul set a card and then activate chain energy, right? So the set could have been like a bluff, like another True Nade or something like that. And so potentially Aratus snipes that back row thinking, oh, it actually could be a powerful spell, not chainable here. I get to get rid of that spell. I'm going to make that trade. And so that might have been what happened there as well.
No, well, no doubt that surely he wasn't expecting a Call of the Haunted, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the major punish, right? If it was Call, that's the thing that punishes
Yes.
it the most.
Yeah,
But at least,
exactly.
if it
Yeah.
is Call as well, because Soul could have also just activated True Nade, then chain Call to it too, right? And then
That's what I
back the Call
said
to
a
hand,
minute or
and-
so ago.
yeah.
He could have done that if if Dust Tornado targeted chain energy, and then set it again later.
Yeah, but this
Or
this
that
way
turn.
the Call is gone, so it's a punish
Yes.
still, but it's not like the worst punish in the world.
Think about this turn. What would have happened if he'd set Call the Haunted again and that got MST'd?
Yeah, well, the MS
We would have seen 2 searches off from that.
No, because I don't think that Aratus would blind MST a set.
Yeah.
Either. They probably would have saved the MST for the
If
Call
he knows it's
activation.
Call.
Well, no, you just
Yeah.
save it in general, because there's no like the only battle trap in this format is Mirror Force, which is at 1 copy. So you don't really care about blind MSTing back row to go into the battle phase, because it won't matter in almost every situation unless it's the limited 1-of card. So
Call the Haunted is technically a kind of battle trap.
yeah, but that's
Not
why you
in the
hold
sense like
MS
Mirror
it's one
Force.
that dies
Yeah.
to a held MST, right? So you don't need to
Yes.
fire it blind. But
By the way, an important thing, like I see people not maining much Fisher, and so like makes Tomato a powerhouse, because like the outs to Tomato like gets lower.
Oh, there's the second. Oh, there's the second one, and there goes Solemn
hits a
Judgment.
Solemn. Kind of surprised Solemn's still in the deck after siding, but I guess it makes sense, because if you figure your opponent's on more spell trap removal,
that's
pretty rough for Aratus.
might not be
here,
that
potentially.
bad.
Or
No,
not.
I mean let's be broken. Like
Classic.
it's the
classic
third
DB
time in a
shuffling.
row, guys.
It happened again, though there are 3 tomatoes, so this
Yeah.
is more.
I mean,
and
there
this is
were
early in the
multiple-
game.
Well, I mean, he had also 3 chasers early on.
Yeah,
There
so
were-
Yeah, but that was later in the duel.
we
The-
joke.
most chasers are gone.
We joke about this, but like the shuffler, like there is confirmation bias. Like we don't necessarily notice all the times when the shuffler
This is 3
gives
in a
us
row.
a random card, or the times when it does. Like if it's shuffling randomly, then there's going to be a chance that you draw the same card that you put on top of the deck, for instance. So,
But I
you know,
mean, 3 in a row with
Or
the two
another
different
copy.
players
Yeah.
in the same tent.
well,
I
again,
mean,
you know,
it's
multiple copies
suspicious.
of things, right? Like multiple tomatoes still left in deck, potentially 3 copies of tomato left in deck. So, you know, it's not necessarily like the craziest thing in the world. It is just very funny here.
No.
But still,
Yeah,
like,
I
I
say
would still give the second shuffle.
Yeah, I like to
Dual-
shuffle twice just in case, but
Duel 1 was funnier because it was much later and digging through the deck and it just popped Mechanical Chaser again. That was
Yeah.
funny.
But
And then,
also
but
with-
also, I mean,
with
also
less card-
Sol, he had a cretin set and he still milled the cretin.
yeah, but also
As
there are
per
less cards in
card.
deck at that point. It's a 1/8 chance as opposed
Yes.
to a 1 out of 40 chance, right? So
Or 3 out of 40.
well, yeah, but ooh, that's pretty good for Aratus here, getting in for 1,400. You got the Forceful as well to send back something, but Soul's hand is kind of threatening as well. Unclear what exactly you want a Forceful back potentially, but also that double chain energy, very scary when your opponent has 9,300 points of life points at the end of this turn. So call will potentially help though. So
So 0 monsters from Sol's side.
Yes.
yeah.
The second tomato is going to get some damage in,
Yep.
and then Aratus can do what he likes.
Yeah, we'll
after
have to
that.
see what they do. They're probably going to fire the Forceful here, and they are indeed getting a full peek of what Soul is working with there. And we get a full peek as well. That is a stacked hand. Wow. What do you send there? That's a good question. I feel like pot
You
is
know that
easy.
Aratus says the knock.
Yeah. The knock can be
Knock
really
and
The
good,
knock exists.
but knock
so
into
Spear Crit
ceasefire
can stay.
is awkward.
No,
now.
wait, guys. It's
Um,
pot of greed. Like,
yeah, the pot is the clear choice off the Forceful, but you know it's awkward. It's a really awkward card to send because
yeah,
the
but
rest of the hand counters a lot of what you got, right? If you fire knock on the Cretan,
Yes.
your opponent fires ceasefire and stops the knock. You also got
Furthermore,
double
Aratus
chain.
has used a Dust Tornado on 2 MST, so
but I mean, where are the
he might
heavy
not
storms?
have
He
the
just-
removal yet.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but like you must have sided in some heavy storms. Like, I mean,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
he doesn't mind them at all, but like, because otherwise
should
you
be
would
in at
get
this point.
finished by back row decks. You know, like you can't allow that. You need to side those heavy storms.
yeah. And
So what did he shuffle? Pot? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you have to take pot here, but it is just kind of
Yeah.
rough knowing what Soul's working with next turn.
Mm.
The
No,
good
but it
thing
depends.
is that
If you heavy storm and easy.
yeah, well, I mean, I think we'll get to see a little bit of that depending on how many cards Aratus sets here. But
He has to set some cards.
well, yeah, he's
He
got
has
to
like
set some
8.
because he's at hand
No,
limit. But
that's
if he's
4.
got heavy storm, he's probably not going to set all 5.
Oh,
And
Well, it depends. Well, yes.
it does depend as well. But
yeah.
No, set 3. Maybe he doesn't have heavy storm,
Looks
but
like
they
set
maybe
4.
some tornado.
It looks like he might not.
Potentially, yeah. We'll have to see what
But
happens.
I don't
That
know. I
set
mean,
could
you
be a
can still
Magician of
use
Faith
cards before
as well.
solving heavy storm. So,
But Soul's thinking here. Do they go for a Cretan? Do they go for the tomato? The Cretan loop is
This
not
is a
online
good
yet, but
No.
if you Cretan back,
Cyberjar.
well, I
is
think
present,
honestly,
though.
Cretaning back the Morphing Dart number 2 is a bit better for you here. And the reason for that is you are 7
Potentially.
cards down on your opponent. Morphing Dart number 2 hitting 2 of their monsters back is much better for you than potentially just hard drawing 5 on your opponent's turn likely. So yeah, I think if you are Cretaning, you're probably going to Cretan back the jar number 2, not the Cyber Jar. But that's just my potential play.
Huh?
activate it.
I think that
Oh,
was a
he
misclick.
didn't mean
I think that was a
to?
misclick.
Misclick.
Yes.
Yeah, so because I mean, and that's a very easy misclick to see, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, because you want to set the generators so that way you can activate 2 of them. Looks like the swords will fire on that Momonga, revealing that. And Soul's going to think about maybe debating about what last card to set here.
Only out for Soul is drawing if he drew.
Okay,
Imperial
there's the
Order.
torture.
Well, we'll have to see what Aratus got for this. They knew this was coming.
Yeah,
Knock.
we know he has knock,
In
so
standby, it looks like they're going to
standby.
go
Standby?
for ceasefire here.
All right.
I
There
feel
we
like
go.
they save the ceasefire for
Uh,
the knock or the heavy, right?
It's true. We can just do that.
Like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about fighting the ceasefire there. I think you can just save it for later. I guess you're doing it to prevent Jinzo from coming down and stopping that.
But I mean, couldn't he just chain to knock? Like when he used knock, he changed his
Yeah,
fire.
I guess the reason he was doing that is to prevent Jinzo from just being normal summoned first thing main phase one,
Yeah.
and then shutting off the ceasefire that way. But
Either way, unless he set Heavy Storm, he's eating big damage here.
well, it depends on what he wants to do. Aratus didn't have to commit anything
Yes.
else to board here.
Oh,
And oftentimes against
Well,
burn decks, you
he's
don't
also
want to
dark
commit
hole
anything
in
to board.
end. He can dark hole and knock whatever is the target of Spear Creating.
Yeah, but it looks like he's just going
okay.
to switch the tomato defense, pass back to soul.
Mm.
I think that makes sense. A lot of the difficulty that people have against burn decks is that they feel the need to constantly be doing things, right? Like it's your turn. You want to do something on your turn.
Yeah.
But oftentimes against burn decks, they can be counterproductive and can potentially cost you the game as well, which is part of what makes them so tricky to play against.
Especially this early period in burn decks. Later on, it just outright stopping you from doing things, and you have no choice but to do nothing, or something minor instead of trying to go full bore into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you need to wait for the perfect combination. So like, and splash it all at once when you can out every single defense. Wait, maybe double heavy storm, even something like that eventually.
But
So
eventually,
I would rather play against this kind of burn deck than like chain burn though.
Yeah. Chain burn, I mean, I will say one thing for chain burn is that, like chain strike burn, not chain energy burn, is that, it's much quicker. So at least the games are over sooner.
Yeah, he's also more proactive. Like he's not. I mean, he's still a reactive deck, but like for example, for this burn deck of Soul we see, we can define it as a reactive deck because he needs to play over like the opponents doing something, and the chain.
Aratus
Yeah, sorry.
will be forced. Sorry, continue.
I mean, they could have drawn another
No,
knock.
just the chain burn deck is like quicker, is more reactive because you create the chains yourself.
Yeah. Well,
For the most part, yes.
another interesting thing about this chain energy burn deck is that to me, oftentimes I feel like when I'm up against it, I have to solve a puzzle, where it's like, which cards do I use here? Which cards, like, when do I do it? How do I sort of structure this so that I'm still alive at the end of this combo, even if they've got like Just Desert or Ceasefire or something like that. And I think that,
That's true.
I enjoy that sort of gameplay because it's something different from everything else. But I also understand why a lot of people don't enjoy that gameplay at all.
I mean,
because it's
It's a
something different.
playstyle that reminds me the stall milling Yugi Kaiba, because also there, like for example, comes to my mind when I think, no, I need to keep this man interbug for a summoner's call, and stuff like that. And so like, yeah, like you said, solve the puzzle and use the cards for the exact card are supposed to be used.
Yeah, but I think it's also cool that the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh actually provides you these different strategies that are doing things completely differently from any other deck is doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you play something like chess, for instance, right? Like, you could have different strategies on the chessboard, but your opponent isn't suddenly going to flip over their rook and say, this is the super queen, and then, do something crazy with that, right? It's,
Yeah.
there's sort of a more constrained set of moves possible, but in Yu-Gi-Oh, there isn't really that sort of thing. So you do wind up with these sorts of things. And this doesn't just apply to Yu-Gi-Oh! This applies to a variety of trading card games because that's part of the fun of trading card games.
You guys play other type games?
Collectible card games are fun like that.
Yeah.
Or just
Or
Yu-Gi-Oh?
can be.
I've played a bit of Magic the Gathering, never like competitively, but I really like Magic. I think Magic's fun a lot as well. But Yu-Gi-Oh is like more closer to my heart because it's my childhood game. So,
Yeah.
that's
he's
why
going
I chose
aggressive.
to focus,
All right.
my
No
channel
Wait.
on it.
summon. Yeah,
Uh,
of course.
also,
Summon.
Yu-Gi-Oh also has an online simulator, which is very nice. Where Magic has like Magic Arena. It also has, I think, Cockatrice is the name of something.
Yeah, Cockatrice.
Ceasefire.
Cockatrice.
It still works under ceasefire.
Yeah, it still gets the effect.
Are not activated at this time.
Yeah, there was the specific ruling we some time ago, like in NetRep. Was NetRep 3.0?
Yeah, as Cretan.
All right.
Yeah, it's very weird. But
Yes, it's deliberately worded after being flipped, not
yeah. But the interesting
Yeah,
thing
like,
as like
here,
Cyberjar. It's like immediate.
yeah, the
You
interesting
destroy,
thing
including
here is that,
itself.
like, you could just attack into the Cyberjar and potentially try and get things to out the established board here.
Yes, he needs to out the Cyberjar now.
Yeah, well,
If he
the
doesn't,
question is, do you attack into it, or do you potentially, if you've got a knock in hand, you go for that? I think we know about Dark Hole as well. You could Dark Hole the Cyberjar too, although that's putting a lot of
he'll
investment
lose
into
his
this.
board. But
But I
yes,
think
that works.
I do think actually that it's worse for Sol if he resolves Cyberjar because it's still like the deck out thing.
Yeah, and
I
that is
mean,
Not just the
something
deck out
very
thing,
much to consider as
the
well.
double chain energy. He'll be
yeah, I mean,
forced
like
to
Aratus
pitch
just
cards.
wait and Sol will just
Yeah, I mean,
deck out.
like Soul has 8,300 life points here. So if Aratus doesn't hit anything too aggressive off the Cyberjar, they're probably fine on the double chain energy front. They also play Trunades to get around this specifically. The big issue here, though, is that, like, if Soul doesn't have any way to get super aggressive here, then this could be really bad for them in terms of the deck out situation. Next turn, if that Cyberjar survives, Soul's probably going to flip up the Cyberjar here either way, to draw a bunch and also potentially get more monsters on field. But they are dropping pretty low in deck.
Did Sol have
Indeed.
Trunade by any chance?
He's decided not to do that.
One Trunade in Grave, but there are probably more in deck. These decks generally play like 3 Trunade because it is so powerful in conjunction with multiple chain energies.
Because now, like,
Yeah.
it's
This is the
1,000
part.
for each card used, so
Yeah,
kind of
this
a
is
big
the.
deal.
Oh.
But
Oh.
that Justice
Ah.
Arts and Ceasefires are going to be pretty good there. Yeah, I think Aratus should have just attacked in.
Did
last
he
turn.
use 6?
With that
Wait, did he
Raigeki as
push
well, that's gonna be
6?
very good.
Did
Did he just
he
use 6?
banish 6 on accident?
No, he already
Yeah.
had a tomato banished. The tomato, that tomato
he
should not
summoned
be
the
there.
tomato.
One tomato shouldn't be there.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, let's see if they notice.
Well, I mean, I'm messaging.
Already took care of it.
Yeah. So, yes, it won't be 2,800 swinging in after a Raigeki there, but yeah, because knock did happen, and yep, it looks like they will indeed banish that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Raigeki can make Soul go for a bit of an aggressive push here. Raiders probably has some ways to deal with this, potentially. But we did see some multiple IOs, I think, on Aratus' part get drawn there.
Funny.
So they might not have an IO set.
Yeah. He got IO from the Cyberjar. But Soul has 2 options here. 1, Raigeki and get more damage in, or 2, go for a bomb with a ceasefire and just desserts.
Yeah, and that will be 2,000 damage off those, dropping Aratus down to 2,700, which restricts greatly what they can do. You can then go for a Raigeki play on the next turn as well, to then push
with Jinzo being dropped potentially, or
well, I mean,
either way.
It's going to be
either
a tough
way
spot for Aratus there.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah. But let's see what they do. They're going to pay 1,000. They are indeed going to go for something. They're going to set one.
That amount.
Yeah. He's eating it. Yes, he's decided
He's building up
to
the
go for
damage for
ceasefire.
ceasefire. Yeah.
Yes.
Ceasefire, yeah, and
And just desserts.
yeah.
Well, yeah, but
So
the
this
setting
is
doesn't
just
build
the
up the damage for
starter.
just desserts. The setting builds up the
I
damage
know.
for ceasefire.
Ah, he sets one more, yeah, because Soy can deal 15 with ceasefire.
Yep. And in
So
standby, it
did he
seems.
set another? Did he set another cretin?
Oh,
He
looks
knows,
like
yeah, he
so.
knows
there's
that
This
the
is in
Aratus has
ceasefire.
Jinzo
standby.
in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Aratus has Jinzo in hand, so he has to use it.
Yep, there's the cretin.
Yep. And just desserts is probably also yeah. So this is still
Yeah.
in
And
standby.
what's the
You
last
do have
one?
to.
Let's see if he will use it.
Yep. And yeah.
And
Only,
now
only
it'll be
2 summons
1,000
left,
more.
or 2 things.
It'll be
left to do.
1,000 more to tribute summon that Jinzo.
Yep. But that's the question of if Aratus wants to tribute summon Jinzo.
Yeah, if
Yeah,
he
he
does,
kinda-
he's doomed. If he doesn't, well, he's doomed.
Well,
The
I
Raigeki in
don't
hand.
think that it's so. I don't think it's as simple as like one thing being. We don't know what else is in Aratus' hand. That's the thing, right?
I think
Yeah.
that tornado set.
Yeah.
At least one.
It's just saying that he only has 2 activations left unless it's an
From
MST
hand.
or Dust Tornado.
From hand.
From
so,
hand, yes.
He pay.
There's-
He's paying
yep.
So
for
they will pay
Jinzo.
1,000 to bring out the Jinzo there. Bit of a risky
He
play.
doesn't.
Oh, Snatch Steal
Oh.
on the tomato is going to be
Yeah,
very
but the
good. Let's see.
cretin activates anyway. He can loop it. He has another one in the grave, no?
Well,
Yeah.
change of heart will
Oh!
finish that. We don't know
GG.
about the Mirror Force.
Alright.
That was
GG.
probably set, but that's 1,900 plus 1,850, so 3,750. Yeah, this will be the end of the game if Soul does not have a way to deal with it, and it looks like
No, he's
Soul
taking
will
the
indeed
damage.
take it
and,
all. So very close game. Aratus did wind up at 200 life points
Yeah.
there, but unfortunately it was not quite enough against against deck.
Unless.
Well,
No,
there's
he's just
nothing that you can
suspense
activate
for
here.
There it
that-
is.
Well,
There
MST
it
would
is.
have to be.
Karibo.
Yeah, Karibo would
Karibo,
also
but-
be pretty good there, but yeah,
But
very
Karibo,
very
like,
good game. Yeah, very intense game. And yeah, that's
yeah, now
probably
we
Mirror
wanna
Force set,
know
I
what
assume.
the
Yeah, it was indeed the Mirror
Yes.
Force. Yeah.
Force, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, very intense game. And I think we saw like how it does pay to be patient with the burn deck. Even if like double chain energy setup, not necessarily guaranteed win there. But congratulations to both players for, making this far, and great final match.
Yeah, that's a crazy match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's part
Might
of
have
the
been
fun
better
of
to
watching
just-
burn games. Even if you don't like playing burn games, watching them at least is like very interesting to spectate and see what's going on there, and speculating what each player
Welcome,
has and stuff
Soul.
like that. But yeah, welcome
Hello.
to the voice chat, Soul. And
Yeah,
yeah.
I just want to first apologize for those for making the games pretty long.
No
in that
worries.
regard, but
I mean,
yeah.
it was pretty fun to see, and very interesting deck. And the deck did make it to finals, so I think you showed that it is pretty decent at least. But yeah. So, what were your thoughts on the deck after playing it through the locals tonight?
Oh, in terms of how I build it, I basically took like an old PSV list and adjusted it to some stuff that I was thinking of. Maybe like from seeing from the Imperial coverage, right? You were talking about using Jinzo as a burn spell. I didn't do that in my original version, so I added Jinzo in for that. But that being said, I think still I needed to. I think side deck wise, I think the idea of like basically my plan afterwards is like going second is smoke screening into a more aggro strategy, just because it does a lot better compared to burn. But I feel like in terms of that, I didn't have all the correct cards to do that yet. I feel like I needed like some knocks in there, so maybe I would just change a couple of things from the side to make it work in that regard. But as a whole, I think like the deck definitely is strong. There is but it can be hard to pilot though. I guess that's sort of the thing about like burn around this time in that regard. But yeah,
definitely the trickiest thing in my opinion about burn. And it's also tricky to play against. So we've also got Aratus here, who actually won against the deck. So Aratus, what was your sort of experience playing against this, and what sort of strategies did you use against it?
Well, I mean, Cyberjar is like my top one least favorite card because not only do you get 5 of your own new cards that you have to think about, but you also get information on 5 cards your opponent has. It just makes the game really complicated. It's a lot to think about. Like by far, like the hardest games you'll ever play are definitely ones with Cyberjar involved.
Yeah, we definitely saw
Yeah.
that here. Like you both had like 10 card hands and stuff. And then that forceful on the hand with the pot of greed that you have to take, but then you see everything else in the hand as well, and it's like, oh my goodness, how do you craft your turns around that?
Yeah, it's like at least these other 10 cards in hand, I know what they are. If there's pot, then there's 3 unknown cards.
Yeah. So I think that was definitely the move. It was just very, very tricky. And you managed to navigate it very well. I mean, you won the match. And that final turn was also like pretty crazy. But it worked out. So down to 200 life points exactly. But that's all you need. As long as you got 1 life point left, you can still win.
Yeah, like I knew that that card on the far right, or I guess the left from this perspective. I knew it was the Mirror Force, but like I was worried that it would end up just being something like a Solemn, just randomly.
Yeah, or an MST, I guess, there would have also been really bad for the snatch deal.
Hmm.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, oh, also since it came up on screen here, that final play of the first game too was very big brain. Just, and I think it does show the complexity of having triple Jinzo and triple Call the Han and stuff in this format and changing how you have to
Which play
think about it.
exactly?
Where you reborned your opponent's Jinzo, so that way they
Oh,
could
yeah,
Call the
yeah.
Haunted it back, and then you could snatch steal it and go for a game that way.
Like I messed up in that regard because I was considering actually just going for Nimble just so I can gain some life points back in that instance. I don't know if that would have been game still, but that was a big throw in my part. But yeah.
No, I think it was fine on your part because normally that would be the right play to do, I think, right? Like normally you're like
He
depriving your
had the
opponent of
snatch
reborn.
steal.
And well, yeah, but that's why
Yeah.
I'm saying normally it would be the right play to do to call that. But yeah, it just didn't quite work out there. But yeah, very, very
Yeah, because
Hmm?
another like facet of that as well is that I didn't have a Jinzo of my own in my graveyard. Like if I had my own Jinzo and I'm reborn targeting yours, like it's pretty obvious something fishy is going on here. But when I don't have my own Jinzo in the graveyard, it becomes a lot more tempting to just call target that Jinzo.
Yeah. And so there was no way you could really necessarily read. I mean, you could potentially read it, but like, I don't think that you'd be expected to read that just from what information you had, right? Um,
Yeah,
so
I think for a second I just like I think I was like thinking for a second that Aratus had like a monster on field for some reason, but like that obviously wasn't the case because then they would have just been able to tribute summon Jinzo and then snatch steal for game that way. So, but yeah, no, it's a tough situation either way though. It was
No,
really,
but Cole
but the
was a
games are
good
long.
play.
Yeah,
Like if you let the Jinzo reborn, like he just has Jinzo on board.
yeah.
Like
So
easy
yeah,
path.
I think that, but this does show, like, we were talking throughout the stream, how unique this format is from other DM era formats because there's just so much interactivity. Like having the triple Call the Haunted, having the triple Jinzo to have Jinzo almost always either in the graveyard or like online and having to play around that. And also the triple IO as well. You wind up with these crazy chains that you don't really see anywhere else than DM era. And it really makes this format, like, in my opinion, like really fun. What were your two thoughts on that, having played a bunch of games in it tonight?
I mean, playing, it may be a bit of a controversial take, but I usually like playing against burn decks. I mean, it depends. Like, if your deck is like has the tools to beat it. Like, if you have ways to interact with the burn deck, it can definitely be an interesting challenge. The thing with this format though is I don't know how good or popular the burn deck is though, and like the standard machine deck, just mirrors of that can be pretty underwhelming.
Yeah. But even in the standard machine mirror, I found that there are some interesting interactions that you can do. For instance, if your opponent doesn't have a Jinzo up and they're attacking him with like mechanical chasers and stuff, you can potentially, just knowing when to use your IO to potentially dodge around limiter removal in some way. or at least attempt to, because your opponent can chain limiter removal to the IO. But there's some like interesting interactions that you can do in those matchups as well. But it is definitely like, the machine OTK mirrors are definitely their own sort of animal. But I am curious about Burn in this format. And I don't think it's necessarily like, Rogue. It could be like tier 2 or above, I think. But this format's so underexplored. It's tough to really know completely. So I hope the people watching out there sort of look at this and are like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. I want to play this a little bit more. And then dive into testing it. And if you do want to do that, hop on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server, link in the description of the stream. And you can find games in this format, as well as any other formats that we show off on the channel. And also you can participate in these sorts of local tournaments. We hold them every week. And if you're in the Discord server, you get to vote on what time they happen. And you can play in them. And they're always really fun. So I hope that you do that if you're interested. But I think I'm going to call the stream there. Congratulations to everyone who played in this event. Those were some really, really fun games. They made for a really fun stream. And hopefully more people try out this format. But until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero. I'm going to be signing off. So peace.
On the couch. Bye-bye.
By the way,
Have a good night,
Aratus
guys.
4-time champion.